Chapter 1953. In the end, even Shui Xian, Hai Bo and the others started to curse. P.C.O.M. However, some people in Mo Yuntian had already touched the bottom line of these people. The qualitative change that Chu Yang was looking forward to was about to take shape. Meng Wuya put his hands behind his back and used his divine sense to check the situation. He could clearly feel that someone was playing tricks in the dark. On many of the paths that one had to pass through, the places where it was easiest to find treasures would always lead to conflicts. On the contrary, there was nothing in some inconspicuous places. Many of the sources of conflicts were caused by a tyrannical energy that was secretly setting up many treasures and traps. The purpose was to make the various sects and Mo Yuntian's army fight. Unfortunately, even though Great General Meng had already understood the whole story, he was still helpless. It was not only because there was no evidence. It was also because these were all open schemes. Those treasures were all treasures from a long time ago. They were definitely not fake. If Mo Yuntian and the others did not covet them and really did not commit any crimes, these schemes would be broken by themselves. But human nature was like this. His subordinates could not avoid falling into these open schemes. Besides, the tyrannical energy that was directing all these was the most unpredictable. It was fleeting and traceless. This was the most troublesome point. It was still the same saying. The unknown was the most unpredictable and the most terrifying thing. At this moment, Meng Wuya was focused on searching. He must first find that whatever divine spirit of the calamity. Only by settling this unknown divine spirit of the calamity would Chu Yang have nothing to show for it. When Meng Wuya used the hand of nothingness previously, although he did not really get Chu Yang, he was sure that he knew Chu Yang's depth very well. On the other hand, if the divine spirit of the calamity did not show itself, it was equivalent to having a strong enemy watching from the side. Then, wanting to catch Chu Yang under the protection of such a strong divine spirit of the calamity was undoubtedly a fool's dream. It was absolutely not realistic. In the realm of God's source, the hesitation and quarrels gradually escalated. Finally, some people with more explosive tempers started to fight. Once it started, there were many people who followed suit. The situation became more and more serious. Even if both sides were tolerant, when one side turned around, they would definitely be ambushed. Once they were injured, in order to protect themselves, they would naturally turn around and fight. There would be no more words. Ambushing me? I have already retreated and you are still ambushing me. Just now, you were pretending to give in, but it turned out that you were plotting against me. Who would be able to take this lying down? For a moment, the sounds of fighting could be heard from all directions. At first, everyone was still restraining themselves and did not dare to kill. However, when one side finally lost a life, they could no longer control their emotions and went all out. Leave the north and south to attack the east and west. Yen Russian, who was hovering in the air, gloated at the chaos. In the face of such a situation, even Meng Wuya, a super old monster who had led troops for hundreds of thousands of years, felt helpless. Over there, the battle was getting more and more intense. Over here, the Eastern Royal Celestial Army was monitoring the situation, sitting on the mountain and watching the tigers fight. If he were to participate in the command, those bastards from the Eastern Royal Sky would probably immediately send their entire army over. There was no doubt about that. But now, the conflict was getting more and more intense. If they didn't stop it, the casualties would be even more severe. Moreover, they would become mortal enemies with all the super sects in the world. This power was something that even Heavenly Emperor Mo Yuan Tianji feared. With the exception of the men from Heavenly Sword Union of Extreme Heaven, who had yet to get into any conflict with Chen Feng's men, the other sects had basically started fighting. Finally, another mysterious force suddenly flashed. Meng Wuya moved. He suddenly moved. His body was like a ghost as he mysteriously disappeared from his original spot. In the next moment he appeared 1,000 feet away. Bang! Meng Wuya seemed to have struck something with his palm. He quickly chased after it. Only the sounds of banging could be heard. In the next moment, the sounds disappeared. Meng Wuya carried something with one hand and spun out like a whirlwind. Bang! He threw it on the ground. Everyone stared at it. That thing was a zombie. Many parts of this zombie's body had already collapsed. Some of its joints were strangely broken. There was also a huge hole in its lumbar vertebrae. Now that it was thrown on the ground by Meng Wuxia, it was actually still twisting strangely and moving bit by bit. A zombie with a divine soul tribulation? Meng Wuxia looked around with a sharp gaze and shouted, "Divine soul tribulation. Come out. Otherwise, I will first destroy the zombies you have painstakingly cultivated. I will destroy all of your zombies one by one and crush them all into powder." Behind him, there was no sound at all. The soul of the calamity swallowed a mouthful of saliva as if it were a living person in a certain secret area. It said with a dumbfounded expression, "Who is this person?" To be able to reduce a celestial tier zombie to such a state in a single exchange, his strength is quite impressive. Chu Yang smiled bitterly. "I only know that he is an expert. I don't know what his cultivation is." Chu Yang grinned. "He is at least a beginner saint, about the same level as me." The divine soul stared at him. "Little ancestor, why is your enemy here? Is he so strong?" Chu Yang was disdainful. "Is he very strong? How is he compared to Xue Leihan?" "Ha, little ancestor, this doesn't seem to be a comparison. What kind of person is His Majesty Donghuang? Although this so-called general has a certain level of strength, if he were to fight to the death, he would still die in my hands." The divine soul of the calamity laughed conceitedly. "So you are that strong? Then what are you waiting for? Hurry up and kill him." Chu Yang was overjoyed. "Little ancestor, you misunderstood me. I said that if we fight to the death, then I can kill him. I didn't misunderstand you. I just want you to kill him." "Pa. In fact, at our level, there is basically no possibility of a fight to the death. With his strength, he must be second only to one person and above millions of people. How can there be a situation where we won't stop until one of us dies? Even if we really want to fight to the death, the strength of the two of us is roughly equal. Without 3 to 5 months, I really can't kill him." "What? 3 to 5 months? Fight a battle every 3 to 5 months? Are you kidding me?" "You misunderstood me again. At our level of strength, time is no longer of much significance to us. If it is not a battle of attrition, it is not enough to cause enough fatal damage. The reason why I am confident that I can kill him and not die is because of the special characteristic of my divine soul. It is immortal. Is that so? Doesn't that mean that you can kill anyone in the world? It's not the same. With my cultivation, I can easily kill most people in the world. I can kill those who are on the same level as me or slightly stronger than me. But if I meet someone who is much stronger than me, I can only run for my life, such as His Majesty Donghuang. Does that mean that Jun Yi Ho can deal with you? Kill me is not appropriate. Although they can easily defeat me, I can escape unscathed with the special characteristic of the divine soul. When I met His Majesty Donghuang before, I was too shocked by His Majesty. If I really face His Majesty Donghuang again, although I will definitely be no match for him and won't even have the courage to fight him, it will not be difficult for me to escape unscathed. Damn, isn't that quite impressive? You can't say that. Everything in the world has a nemesis. It is not necessarily that there is no nemesis that can restrain me. The divine soul replied. In fact, there was something that the divine soul did not dare to say. The shadow behind you is a super nemesis that can perfectly restrain me. Comparing his strength to His Majesty Donghuang's, it is hard to say. But when it comes to restraining me, he can just wave his hand and I will be finished. So there are so many secrets in this. When one's cultivation reaches a certain level, it is difficult to kill him. Forget it, let's not think about those things for the time being. Let's put it this way. You said that the general has such a high cultivation, but he can't do anything to me. This proves that I have a great future. Don't you understand such a simple principle? That's true. The divine soul nodded and suddenly felt a little happy. This sentence made a lot of sense. Could an ant become enemies with a giant dragon? That was something that did not even need to think about. The little ancestor dared to fight with him when he was in the heaven grade. Now that he was in the holy position, It was not a big deal for him to have an enemy who was on the same level as him. He was making a fuss about nothing. Even if the little ancestor told him that his enemy was the descendant of Jun-yi, it would not be surprising. At this moment, Meng Wuya shouted again from outside. Then, he stepped on the zombie's head with one foot and slowly exerted force. With a crack, the zombie's head, which was known to be immortal, was instantly crushed. Then, from the neck down, it was completely crushed and the whole body turned into powder. A wisp of black smoke slowly emerged from the zombie's body. It turned in the air and was about to escape. As long as this wisp of black smoke could escape, it would recuperate for 300 to 500 years and become a zombie again. Someone saw this and wanted to stop it, but Meng Wuya waved his hand and stopped them. His sharp eyes looked at the direction of the wisp of black smoke. The black smoke turned in the air and spontaneously floated away. Meng Wuya did not move, but his eyes were fixed on it. He wanted to use the characteristic of the original spirit to find the owner of the zombie, the divine soul. The black smoke gradually drifted to the northeast. Not good. The divine soul shouted, "He is using the zombie's black smoke to find me." Chu Yang was startled. "That black smoke is your life force?" The divine soul's face was a little ugly. "Yes. If it were not for my life force, I would not have been able to form the zombie." Chu Yang asked in surprise, "You are not afraid of him? Do you have to look so ugly?" Chapter 1954. The meaning behind the Divine Spirit's words was obvious. "I'm not afraid, but I'm afraid you'll be implicated. Two sage-level experts are fighting. You're just a little sage. Won't you die if you touch them? Won't you be seriously injured if you even touch them?" Chu Yang obviously thought of this too. He couldn't help but think of a countermeasure, but he couldn't think of a good way. The next moment, he saw a wisp of black gas hovering in the air above a certain place. Meng Wuya shouted. His body disappeared from his original spot and reappeared at the place where the black smoke was hovering. There was another burst of fighting sounds. Then he pulled out another zombie. See, This time, he didn't ask again. Instead, he directly crushed the zombie completely. Then, another wisp of black gas came out directly. The two wisps of black gas merged into one. It moved faster and floated to the third place. In the blink of an eye, Meng Wuya had destroyed 5 of the zombies. The divine spirit's face was a little ugly. Once Meng Wuya killed the first one, the life origin chi would automatically come to find its master, Meng Wuya. At that time, he wouldn't be able to escape. He wasn't afraid of fighting, but what about Chu Yang? Go out quickly and collect all the life origin energy. Then fight with him. He can't do anything to you anyway. Then find a chance to hide. Chu Yang rolled his eyes and said, "It's not necessarily a bad thing to destroy all the zombies. As long as you collect the life origin energy, it'll be really troublesome for him to find you again." The divine spirit nodded slowly. Although this was a last resort, it was the best solution at the moment. No, after Meng Wuya defeated the first 5 zombies, he didn't continue to look for the last one. Facing Chu Yang's hiding place, he said lightly, "Chu Yang, I know you're there. Come out, I want to talk to you." Chu Yang's face tightened. Did he really find out? It didn't seem like he was playing tricks. But he didn't find out before. How did he find out now? There are only a few directions in this place. But this divine spirit's life origin energy deliberately avoided the direction you are in twice. Therefore you must be here. Meng Wuya said indifferently, "Come out. This old man guarantees that as long as you come out, I won't take advantage of this opportunity to deal with you." Even if they were enemies, there were still some words to say. However, we still need to make things clear before we settle our grudges. Meng Wuya's words were very sincere. However, Chu Yang didn't dare to believe it. In fact, he didn't even believe a single word of it. At this moment, Yen Russian suddenly said, "Chu Yang, come out. Don't worry, I'll be your witness." Since Great General Meng said so, then with Great General Meng's reputation, he would never lie to you. Meng Wuya frowned. He suddenly raised his head and asked in a deep voice, "The O's division?" "So you are Yen Russian?" Yen Russian smiled and nodded. "That's right. That's me." "No wonder. Meng Wuya knew that Chu Yang was Yen Rushan's sworn brother. No wonder Yen Rushan made things difficult for him. And now, he even defended Chu Yang in front of everyone. Now, he had casually made a promise, but he immediately felt the power of the heavenly oath. In any case, they couldn't do anything to Chu Yang for the time being. Otherwise, they would incur the wrath of the heavenly oath in the entire Donghuang heavens. Yen Rushan's action was clearly a trick. Regarding this, Mo Yuntian's generals were all filled with hatred. Just now, a few of them were already prepared to kill Chu Yang the moment he appeared. At most, they would be punished by military law. At most, they would die. In short, they wanted this person who had killed too many people to be one step ahead of them. But now, if they acted rashly, they would cause the death of the great general and even all the people of Mo Yuntian who were on this trip to the Donghuang heavens. Chu Yang's mind turned at lightning speed. He had already made up his mind. He calmed himself down and slowly walked out. Since Yen Rushan said so, Chu Yang could only come out now. Moreover, he also wanted to see what kind of person Meng Wuya was. From there, he could deduce his character and formulate the best escape route. Although he seemed to have the upper hand and was safe, now that his and the Divine Spirit's whereabouts had been exposed, even if the Divine Spirit could escape unscathed, he didn't have the confidence to escape. Thus, he might as well fall off the stage. Now that he had Yen Rushan as his backing, he had the capital to deal with Meng Wuya. The ink cloud guards immediately surrounded him. Meng Wuya looked at Chu Yang with his sharp eyes and said lightly, "Blow the horn. All the people of Mo Yuntian gather. When the horn is blown, those who don't come will be executed immediately." Then, the bleak sound of a bugle horn was heard. All the silver-armored soldiers of the Mo Yun guards gathered in an extremely short time. Whether they were searching or fighting, whether they were willing or not, they all returned to the team. Many of them were already injured and had wounds on their bodies. In such a short time, many people had already lost their lives here. It could be seen that the major sects had also tolerated this bunch of people to the extreme. Once they attacked, they directly greeted them with death and no longer had any intention of holding back. At this moment, when these people retreated, the people of the major sects also heaved a sigh of relief. They glared at them hatefully and immediately suppressed their thoughts of revenge and rushed into the mountains to search for treasures. 10 years was not too late to take revenge. Now, it was more important to quickly search for treasures here. But this time, it was definitely not over. You people of Mo Yuntian are so tyrannical and overbearing. We will remember you. Meng Wuya looked at Chu Yang with his sharp eyes and said lightly, "You are Chu Yang?" Chu Yang smiled amiably. "Of course. How dare you?" A general at the side shouted loudly. It was really like thunder piercing the ear. "Calm down." Meng Wuya stopped this subordinate and took a deep breath. He said, "Then what about the divine spirit of the tribulation?" Chu Yang smiled and said, "What is the divine spirit of the tribulation?" Meng Wuya stared at him for a long time and said, "Chu Yang, although I am not going to beat around the bush, since there are some things that you don't want to say, then I won't force you. But since you don't admit it, then I believe that you have nothing to do with the divine spirit of the tribulation." Chu Yang's heart skipped a beat. There was a huge trap in this sentence. If Chu Yang denied, then later on, Meng Wuya would attack the divine spirit of the tribulation and even use all of Mo Yuntian's forces to deal with the divine spirit of the tribulation. Chu Yang definitely had no reason to interfere, and even more so, he couldn't use the battle power of Donghuang Heaven to interfere. But if Chu Yang admitted that the divine spirit of the tribulation was his, then this realm of the divine source would become an ownerless land. It would become Chu Yang's private territory. Then where did all the treasures go? In other words, Chu Yang was equivalent to offending all the super sects in the world at the same time. No matter which of these two consequences, Chu Yang didn't want to bear either. Especially the latter reason, he couldn't bear it directly. Chu Yang thought about it in his heart, but his expression didn't change. He said, "General Meng, if you have something to say, please say it." Great General Meng's method was undoubtedly shrewd and ruthless, but he misjudged one thing, a very important thing, and that was the power of the divine spirit of the tribulation. Even if he gathered all of Mo Yuntian's battle power, he wouldn't be able to destroy the divine spirit of the tribulation. To put it bluntly, as long as it wasn't a peerless expert at the level of Jianghu, it was impossible to cause any effective damage to the divine spirit of the tribulation. Speaking of great General Meng, although his true power was roughly on par with that of the divine spirit of the tribulation, even if he had the help of Mo Yuntian's army, his overall power was still far superior to that of the divine spirit of the tribulation. Once they fought, the divine spirit of the tribulation would definitely not be his match. But in the end, it would still only be Mo Yuntian's soldiers who would be injured. It was precisely because Chu Yang had previously communicated with the divine spirit of the tribulation and confirmed this point that he could be so calm and full of confidence. As long as Chu Yang could ensure his own safety, there was no need for Chu Yang to worry about the safety of the divine spirit of the tribulation. Meng Wuxia said slowly, "First, I want to make it clear to you. The cause of this matter this time was that our Mo Yuntian's path of primordial essence was wrong first. Whether it was kidnapping your wife, you being forced to defend yourself, whether it was life or death, victory or defeat, it was all my fault. It was also natural for you to kill him. I have to make this clear in advance." He said heavily, "This old man has been in charge of military power for hundreds of thousands of years. Although I kill people like scything flax, at the very least, I can still distinguish between right and wrong." Chu Yang's face revealed a heavy expression. "I understand what you mean." "No, you don't understand," Meng Wuxia said. "His Majesty was killed, and the Lord Heavenly Emperor was extremely furious. So, even if this batch of people doesn't catch you, there will continue to be the next batch of people coming. If you don't die, this matter will definitely not be let go." Chu Yang nodded slowly. "I can also foresee this." In a distant place, there was a sudden explosion of smoke. Meng Wuxia saw it but did not make any movements. These words, on one hand, were said for Chu Yang to hear. On the other hand, it was also said for the divine spirit of the tribulation. "Don't think that just because you are helping Chu Yang, we can't do anything. Don't think that Chu Yang's enemies are only people like me." Chu Yang's enemies were definitely not just these people in front of him. His true enemy was a heavenly emperor or a world. What kind of enormous power was that? As long as this divine spirit of the tribulation was not a fool, then you should consider it carefully. The consequences of interfering in this matter. Are you sure you can afford it? The effect of these words was undoubtedly very big. The divine spirit of the tribulation was indeed shocked. In fact, he was even frightened. When he heard it just now, he was so shocked that he could not perfectly conceal his own aura, so much so that smoke burst out. Oh my God! It turned out that the little ancestor's enemy was actually the heavenly emperor of Mo Yun. Yuan Tianji. That was a big shot who was on par with the East Royal Heavenly Emperor Shui Leihan. And this little ancestor was an enemy of the heavenly emperor of Mo Yun, and even wanted to kill him. This was an irreconcilable enmity. I've just pledged my allegiance to this little ancestor, and he's already causing me such a huge problem? When he thought of this, the divine spirit of the tribulation almost wanted to cry. With the power of a divine spirit of the tribulation, to go against the entire world of Mo Yun. Chapter 1955. At this moment, Tribulation's divine soul was in a dilemma. PCOM. In fact, there was even a hint of cowering. Was it worth it to make an enemy of Heavenly Emperor Mo Yun for Chu Yang? Meng Wuxia looked at Chu Yang and said, "This time, I was ordered to capture you. But I have to say you killed Tai Yuan Shirta. Given your position at that time, you killed him well. You killed him well. There is nothing wrong with killing him. Chu Yang, you are indeed a man. I admire you very much." Meng Wuxia was full of praise as he looked at Chu Yang. His voice was warm, but the words that came out of his mouth were like the cold winter wind. "But appreciation is one thing and duty is another. I have no choice but to hunt you down, capture you," he said in a heavy voice. "I really don't want to. So, I hope you can understand." "I understand. A soldier's duty is to obey the orders of his superiors. No matter how ridiculous the orders are, he has to complete them first. I also admire the general's military sentiments. Chu Yang sighed. Although we are hostile to each other, although at that time you rose up to resist, although that was the right thing to do, although I, Mo Yun Tian Tai, indeed deserve to die, but this old man cannot be merciful to you just because I admire you. Military orders are selfless. Meng Wuya's voice was melancholy. However, as he spoke, the guilt in his voice gradually disappeared bit by bit until there was nothing left. Chu Yang knew very well why this change was happening. He also understood Meng Wuya's feelings at this moment. Whether this battle ends in life or death, victory or defeat, I have no complaints about Great General Meng. Chu Yang raised his eyebrows and said, but I have to remind Great General Meng that in terms of pure martial strength, I am far inferior. If I want to fight against you, I have to use some means that you can't think of, or means outside of martial strength. I admire Great General Meng, but I also won't show any mercy. That's right. Everyone understands. Meng Wuya nodded slowly. There was even a slight smile on his face. I am free. Why do I have no choice? Everything is just helplessness. Chu Yang sighed and said, the so-called right and wrong of a person's heart. In the end, he still can't win against those with high status and power. Right and wrong are decided by others. What is black and white? Meng Wuya was speechless. He looked up at the sky and after a long time, he said in a low voice, I feel that I have nothing to say. I can only apologize. Chu Yang nodded. I understand. This apology was better than 1,000 words. I understand everything. In everyone's heart, there was right and wrong, black and white. However, when this right and wrong was beyond the scope of one's ability, this right and wrong became black and white. It would no longer be important or even completely meaningless. There was no such thing as an absolute bad person in this world, but because of one thing after another. In the end, it created the bad guys. Regardless of whether it was intentional or forced, in the end, this was how it turned out. Isn't it true that the times make heroes? Heroes and villains were separated by a fine line. Life is Jianghu. Chu Yang laughed out loud and said, I sincerely accept General Meng's apologies. Regarding your actions, he deeply understood. Just like how it is impossible for all of you not to capture me, it is also impossible for me not to resist and be tied up. I only hope that all of you who died because of this, please don't take it to heart. It is not a good thing for both you and others. This is the human world. This is Jianghu. Chu Yang's gaze swept across the faces of Mo Yun Tian and the other officers. He said in a low voice, this is Jianghu. There is no freedom in Jianghu. Whether one is guilty or not, one's own heart knows it. How can one confuse it? Although Mo Yun Tian and the others were determined to capture Chu Yang, at this moment, in such a situation, everyone's expression was a little complicated. Some guilt, some admiration, and some determination. These were the expressions of the officers of the silver-armored soldiers. We respect you, not because of your cultivation, but because of your actions. You have done things that most people in this world don't dare to do. However, we still want to capture you, because we are under orders from others and have different standpoints. This was undoubtedly a very contradictory and complicated mentality. As for the faces of the ink cloud guards, there was only coldness, only ruthlessness and ruthlessness. They were the direct subordinates of Heavenly Emperor Mo Yun. There was already no distinction between right and wrong in their hearts. There was only one thought, only the king's orders. They and the silver-armored soldiers belonged to the army, but they were not soldiers. The iron blood and loyalty of soldiers, heroism and heroism, in them, there was only loyalty left. Chu Yang could distinguish the difference between the two at a glance. Then, a plan inexplicably rose in his heart. Could it be possible, maybe, or maybe, probably, Chu Yang, I'll give you a chance. Go. In this realm of divine source, I won't touch you. But as long as you leave this place, you may face my pursuit at any moment. No matter who wants to protect you, they will not be able to shake my determination. Meng Wuya let out a long sigh. Chu Yang smiled. His smile was extremely hearty. But Yen Russian's expression changed when he heard that. Meng Wuya said this sentence in the tone of an oath. Once he said it, it triggered the response of Jianghu. He had to be a witness. But if he were to be a witness, he would definitely not be biased after leaving this place. Because once he was biased, it would also trigger a backlash from the power of Jianghu. This Meng Wuya was indeed shrewd. He actually found his flaw so quickly and used his identity as a division of oaths. Chu Yang's smile also saw through this point. I let you go because of what you said. Ask yourself if you're guilty or not. Your heart knows. How can you confuse it? At this moment, I ask myself if I'm guilty, but it doesn't mean that I can't deal with you in this realm of divine source. You have to understand this. General Meng smiled warmly. Although you have helpers, but this place is ultimately too narrow. And you've already used up all that you can. Seeing that you're still an iron-blooded husband, I specially made this oath. I hope Villa Master Chu can understand my painstaking efforts. Chu Yang said somewhat mockingly, since the general has said so, can I still say that I don't understand? Meng Wuya smiled. I can destroy this place with just a lift of my hand. He said lightly, you're all from the Heaven Imperial Court. You should know about my Heaven Emperor's destruction of wind and thunder. Yen Russian's expression changed. Destruction of wind and thunder. It's actually destruction of wind and thunder. This was the Heaven Emperor's unique weapon. Once it was used, no matter where one was in the space, it could instantly shatter and break through the seal. Moreover, this destruction of wind and thunder had another characteristic. It could instantly condense wind and thunder. Once it was released, it would be so powerful that it could destroy the world. Yen Russian did not expect Yuan Tianjia to let Meng Wuya bring out the destruction of wind and thunder. Under the threat of such a powerful weapon, the situation changed instantly. Destruction of wind and thunder. It's actually destruction of wind and thunder? That General Meng Wuya actually brought out such a deadly weapon? When the divine soul hidden in the dark heard this news, his scalp went numb and he could not calm down. If what Meng Wuya said was true and he really brought out the destruction of wind and thunder, it would be good enough if he could escape with his life using the special characteristic of the divine soul. Everything in the world had a nemesis. Every living thing in the world had at least one nemesis. If one was unlucky, it was normal to meet 3 to 7 nemeses in a day. Of course, the higher one's strength and ability were, the fewer things that could restrain him. Take the divine soul of calamity as an example. In addition to having reached the level of a sage, there were very few things in the world that could restrain him because of his unique physique. However, it was not absolutely impossible for him to be restrained. This relationship of generation and restraint contained several different comparisons. It could be roughly divided into several categories, such as complete restraint, mutual restraint, power restraint, mutual restraint, generation and restraint. For example, the mysterious sword shadow. He was the nemesis of all spiritual bodies. Moreover, his strength was far superior. Therefore, he could completely restrain the divine soul. With a wave of his hand, he could destroy the divine soul and make it never reincarnate. Another example was the sword spirit. He and the divine soul had a mutual restraint relationship. Both of them were spiritual bodies. The key to victory or defeat depended on whose strength was stronger. Under normal circumstances, the sword spirit was a great tonic for the divine soul. However, if the sword spirit obtained a part of the divine soul's body that the divine soul did not infuse with tyrannical power, that part of the body would become a great tonic for the sword spirit. This was the so-called mutual restraint. Generation restraint. Comparing two opposite attributes, the best example was water and fire. Water could extinguish fire, but fire could also boil water. Force restraint. Comparing two opposite attributes, but if one side was too strong, the other side basically had no room to resist. Just like when the divine soul faced Donghuang, it was like this. Mutual restraint, however, was a characteristic of one side that could restrain the other. For example, between the destruction of wind and thunder and divine soul, the destruction of wind and thunder could seal the space and condense the most tyrannical power of wind and thunder. It could restrain the divine soul's body that could dissipate at any time, as well as the dual characteristics of being immortal and indestructible. How could the divine soul not be shocked when he heard that the other party had such a great killing weapon? With this layer, any talk of annihilating so many Mo Yuntian army would become a bubble. Helping Chu Yang seems to be just empty words. Since that's the case, then I'll take my leave. Chu Yang smiled, looking dignified and calm. He cupped his fists and bowed. Everyone, the mountains are high and the rivers are long. We'll meet again someday. Today, after talking with you, Chu Yang admires your demeanor and military spirit. However, even if we appreciate each other, it's only limited to this. Once in a while, it's only limited to here and now. We'll never meet again. Once I go out, it'll be a life and death feud. You won't let me go, and I won't show any mercy to you. Chu Yang faced the Mo Yuntian army in front of him calmly. His expression was calm and his actions were natural. When we meet on a narrow path, I won't show any mercy. Everyone, if you die in my hands, have a safe journey to the Yellow Springs. If I, Chu Yang, am defeated. Chu Yang paused and suddenly laughed. He looked up to the sky and roared, then I won't have any complaints. Chapter 1956. Meng Wuya slowly nodded. Originally from P, the inky cloud guard remained silent. However, the silver-armored soldiers of the Dream Slayer army suddenly let out a deafening roar. Good job. Good man. Go ahead and use all your tricks. Even if we were to die because of the schemes of an iron-blooded man like you, we would not have a single word of complaint. Everyone, let's fight with everything we have. If there's a next life, let's talk again. Good. All right. Chu Yang laughed heartily. Then he flew up into the air and shouted, everyone, let's fight to the death in the outside world with our own means. This Chu will take his leave. What no one noticed was that an invisible aura had already quietly attached itself to Chu Yang's body. It was the Tribulation Divine Soul that had left a unique soul mark on Chu Yang's body. Chu Yang's body rose higher and higher. In the blink of an eye, he was already at the entrance of the tunnel. That arrogant and heroic laughter was still echoing in their ears, but Chu Yang's figure had already completely disappeared. General Meng heaved a deep sigh. His eyes regained their sharpness as he shouted, "Find the soul of the calamity." He leaped into the air and rushed towards the black smoke. In just a short time, he had already dragged the last zombie out of the smoke. Chu Yang had already left. He had gone outside to prepare for a new round of war, or to try his best to escape. After all, this place was the Eastern Royal Heaven. A long delay may lead to many dreams, and no one could predict all the variables. Great General Meng was also worried that something would happen again, so he didn't hold back at all. With just a few punches and kicks, he completely destroyed the zombie. Immediately after, a dense black gas quickly formed and floated towards a certain direction. With a hoarse and strange laugh, Li Mu laughed. With a loud bang, a chilling aura of death that was unprecedentedly thick and had an unusually wide area suddenly erupted and enveloped the black aura within it. At the same time, countless skulls appeared out of thin air and instantly filled the entire realm of God Source. They let out chirping sounds, and the realm of God Source, which had been clear and bright just a moment ago. In the blink of an eye, it had become the netherworld, the underworld, the underworld. The next moment, an extremely evil voice cackled. "What? Do you want to kill me? Do you think you can kill me? Pa." His voice suddenly turned ferocious. "Let me kill you first." In just a short period of time, the divine soul of the calamity had already gone through countless mental struggles. When he heard that Chu Yang's enemy was actually Heavenly Emperor Inkcloud, and such a powerful enemy, the divine soul's first thought was, I should quickly retreat. Otherwise, he would really be implicated by this little ancestor. But how should he withdraw? Should he apologize to the other party immediately? Or should he admit defeat and beg for mercy? But after that, Chu Yang's fearless heroism in the face of Mo Yuntian's army shocked him once again. This was a real man. This is what a real Han is. This was life. This was the real Jianghu. The tribulation spirit's heart was in turmoil. He asked himself, If I were Chu Yang, would I have the courage to face such an iron-blooded army when I was so weak? Did he have the courage to kill Heavenly Emperor Tai? And after that, do you have the courage to fight? The answers were all negative. He didn't dare. Perhaps, when he really encountered such a thing, he might have already handed over his wife. But Chu Yang didn't. Not only did he not compromise, Chu Yang's resistance was the most intense. Incomparably intense. Moreover, judging from Chu Yang's reaction today, it seemed that Chu Yang was already mentally prepared to face this unprecedented disaster. Regarding this point, the divine soul of the calamity was ashamed of his inferiority. Inexplicably, the divine soul of the calamity suddenly felt a surge of hot blood. Although he didn't have this equipment for a long time, at this moment he had this kind of feeling. It was incomparably intense and incomparably real. After Chu Yang's figure disappeared, he immediately heard Great General Meng's order to drag him out. That posture clearly wanted to completely destroy him. The divine soul of the calamity suddenly understood, I've already killed so many of their people previously. Wanting to talk about reconciliation was simply a fool's dream. That was already something impossible. Both sides' standpoints were obvious. Death enmity was already a foregone conclusion. There was no room for change. Suddenly, the divine soul of the calamity was no longer wavering. There was even a kind of determination to fight to the death. You guys actually want to destroy me? This is simply intolerable. Therefore, the divine soul of the calamity suddenly erupted with an unprecedented battle intent. His counterattack was also unprecedentedly intense. Seeing the divine soul of the calamity's powerful counterattack, Great General Meng didn't even bat an eyelid. He directly shouted, "Soul-devouring formation, set up. Attack with all your might and kill him." In an instant, 10 people from the Ink Cloud Guards leaped out at the same time. In an instant, they had already formed a strange formation and attacked at the same time. There were also many other groups of 10 people who formed the same formation. In an instant, 10 formations were formed. Surrounding the initial large formation, there were 10 large formations with close to 1,000 people. They attacked at the same time with all their might. Other than that, the large formations outside and the large formations inside didn't have any conflicts at all. When the attacks of the people outside came into contact with the innermost large formation, they would naturally form a force that blended with water and milk, completely integrating into it. The next moment, a dazzling white light suddenly rose up. This was a majestic white light that could be said to be filled with a sense of holiness. It was filled with a kind of pure and clean feeling, as if it could purify the whole world. This dazzling white light had already filled the entire realm of the God Source in an instant. It filled the entire realm of the God Source under the illumination of the holy white light. Even the most intense cold death aura that erupted from the divine soul of the calamity couldn't suppress it. Soul-devouring formation. It was a very strange formation that specialized in targeting souls. It could purify the energy of the dead. Meng Wuxia had ordered the formation to be set up at the first moment. Moreover, he had ordered 10 large formations to attack at the same time. This had already proved the importance he attached to the divine soul of the calamity. Although he had been extremely cautious and the strategy that he had set up was also very correct, he had still underestimated the divine soul of the calamity in front of him. Seeing that this group of people had actually set up a purifying white light that specialized in countering souls, the divine soul of the calamity flew into a rage. Its ferocious nature flared up. With a shrill howl, countless black palms stretched out at the same time. With a boom, the whole world suddenly turned dark. The white light that had previously engulfed the entire realm of the God Source actually couldn't be seen anymore. The 10 people at the most central position of the entire formation felt a wave of dizziness almost at the same time. Then they felt that their throats were stuck. Kacha, there was a series of sounds of bones cracking. Then, the divine soul of the calamity shrieked and turned into thousands of black sharp arrows. They charged forcefully towards the densely packed crowd of people on Mo Yuntian's side. After the black sharp arrows, the 10 people fell down neatly. Everyone's eyes were bulging with anger. Their hands were on their throats, and their eyes were filled with disbelief. At the same time, they died. The divine soul of the calamity was in one move. It killed 10 ink cloud guards. This was also a manifestation of mutual restraint. In theory, the purifying white light of the soul-devouring formation could indeed purify all the dead souls in the world. The divine soul of the calamity was indeed restrained by it. However, the level of the divine soul of the calamity was too high. It had exceeded the purification limit of the soul-devouring formation. When the divine soul of the calamity retaliated with all its might, such a situation would occur. Once it couldn't bear the burden, the people who set up the formation would only die. Great General Meng's expression suddenly changed. He said, "It's a divine soul of the saint level." Seeing that the enemy was so powerful, it had already exceeded his initial estimation. If his reaction was delayed, he was afraid that it would cause even more deaths and injuries. In the next moment, light flashed. Yen Russian said in a low voice, "Destruction of wind and thunder." All of a sudden, countless sounds of wind and thunder filled the entire realm of the God Source. Then, there was a violent explosion. The divine soul of the calamity let out a shrill cry. Chu Yang left the realm of the God Source at the fastest speed possible. He ran all the way back to the Chu clan courtyard. As soon as he entered, he shouted, "Everyone, gather immediately. The enemy is coming." Those who were still in the Chu clan courtyard were all experts. They were all on high alert. Of course, their reaction speed was very fast. They gathered almost in a few breaths' time. "We need to escape immediately." Chu Yang cut the Gordian knot and went straight to the point. "But we need someone to cover the rear." Chu Yang's second sentence was directed at those who were wavering. "All of you stay behind to cover the rear." This sentence was said resolutely and decisively. These people were angry at first. "All of you have escaped. Why do we have to stay behind to cover the rear? How can this be?" But when he thought about it, he was overjoyed at the turn of events. Because they have escaped. We are now at our most valuable time. Mo Yuntian's people will definitely not kill us immediately. Firstly, they want to understand the movements of these people through us. As long as we tell them the truth, we can make up for our mistakes. Secondly, we are not ordinary people for nothing. If we attack them forcefully, they will have to pay the price. Thirdly, we are the only people in the Eastern Royal Heavens that they can make use of. All of the above were great conditions for negotiation. Therefore, this was a great opportunity for them. This was the real way to survive. Anger appeared on their faces. Then they became heroic. "No problem. We swear that we will cover the rear. We will definitely buy enough time for everyone to escape. Brothers, have a safe journey." Then, those who were in cahoots with each other exchanged glances. They must leave some traces. Otherwise, it would be difficult to track them down. Without the value of tracking them down, there would be less bargaining chips. Chu Yang and the rest did not seem to notice. They hurriedly led their people and left. With a whistle, more than 400 people left. Only the remaining 112 people stayed behind to guard the empty Chu clan courtyard. What should we do? Do what we have to do. Yes, this is our only chance to survive. And we know so many of their secrets. Chapter 1957. These are all bargaining chips for us to negotiate with Mo Yuntian. We are not the main culprits anyway. I believe there will be room for negotiation. Yes. Not to mention that there are still our people in there. As long as they want to follow the clues, they will have to keep us here. Yes, so we have a great chance to survive. We don't need to live in fear anymore. However, it doesn't feel right to betray them like this. After all, many of them are our friends and fellow disciples. Someone was a little hesitant. "Are you out of your mind?" Someone scolded, "Even if we don't do it, they can't escape death in the end. And we will all die. But after doing this, we may be able to survive. It's better than all of us dying, right?" That's true. Since they are destined to die, then using their deaths to exchange for our lives is like using trash. Yes. Then we don't do anything and just wait here? Of course. Do you want to take the initiative to go out and let the other party think that we are provoking them? On the other side, after the escape team left the Chu clan's courtyard and left Purple Cloud City in a straight line from the west, Chu Yang stopped and shouted. Everyone pulled out the 5 people in the team and stabbed them with their swords and spears. The 5 of them didn't even have the time to scream before they died in a relaxed state. Is there anyone else? Chu Yang's face was heavy. No. Everyone knew that this was a matter of life and death, so they immediately answered. Count the people. A total of 410 people. Chu Yang frowned. Didn't you guys spread out to scout for information? Why are you still in the mansion? He asked the subordinates of Thunderbolt, Wild Blade, and the others. 200 people at this moment were all here. This result made Chu Yang very angry. We know that the real intention of the Manor Master is to let us go out to scout for information. After all, we are all new faces. Not many people know that we are the Manor Master's subordinates, but we can't just leave like this. The leader of the group said proudly, although our status is low, our cultivation is low, and we have only known the Manor Master for a short time, we still know who is really good to us. A gentleman will die for his bosom friend. We are weak. Although we can't be of much help and will only be a burden, we are still able to distract the enemy's attention under such circumstances. The 200 men bowed and cupped their fists at the same time. We are brothers. I bid farewell to the Manor Lord here. If I'm lucky enough to survive, I'll definitely return to the Manor Lord's side and live and die with my brothers, sharing glory and splendor. After saying that, he waved his hand and said, Brothers, let's split into 5 groups and move in different directions. If you manage to stay alive in the end, then come back here and wait. If you die, then we'll be brothers in the next life. The 200 people didn't wait for Chu Yang to speak. They shouted in a low voice at the same time. Boom! They split into 5 groups and dispersed in a hubbub. Each team had 40 people. Looking at this group of hot-blooded men, the rims of Chu Yang's eyes became somewhat hot. He sighed deeply. Everyone, please take care of yourselves. I look forward to the day when we meet again. He didn't say anything to stop them, because following him now would only lead to death. Since they can take the initiative to attract the enemy for me, why can't I lure all the enemy away for them? Brothers, you're not the only ones who know how to give. I will too. Let's go. Chu Yang shouted. There were still 210 people left. Following behind Chu Yang, they were like sharp arrows, shooting into the distance at an extremely fast speed. Everyone knew in their hearts that it was unknown whether they would live or die this time. Would they really be able to escape from death? Would it really not be certain death? Facing the death pursuit of the entire Moyun Sky's elites, how far could they go? How far could they escape to? But they could only go on, and go on without turning back. They only hoped that this person who led them could let them go a little further. For a little longer. This day would be recorded in the history books in the future. Heavenly Imperial Calendar, 7th Saint Era. Year 1,702,110, Autumn. It was the beginning of October. The autumn wind fell, and the world was yellow. Minister Cheong Shao, Chu Yang, led 210 subordinates who were still unfamiliar and not united, and began their first long escape after coming to the Heavenly Imperial Palace. In order to escape the pursuit of the subordinates of Heavenly Emperor Mo Yunyuan, the 2 teams with great disparity in strength thus began a life and death battle. The situation in the Heavenly Imperial Palace changed from then on. From this day onwards, Moyun Sky began to decline, and the legend of Minister Cheong Shao started to truly rise in the Heavenly Imperial Palace. That day, the sky was dyed red with blood, and the whole sky was red. Records of the Heavenly Imperial Palace, Wu Buxiao added notes. Chu Yang and his men had walked for a while, and had climbed up a tall mountain in front of them. Suddenly, they heard an earth-shattering explosion from behind them. The sound was so loud that even Chu Yang and the others who were already hundreds of miles away felt an unusually strong impact. Everyone almost fell to the ground. Turning their heads to look from the mountain peak, they saw an unprecedentedly huge mushroom cloud rising slowly in the direction of infinite boundless mountain. Within it, there were countless wind, thunder, and lightning. The place where the mushroom cloud rose was Infinite Boundless Mountain, Divine Source Realm. Completely destroyed. Chu Yang looked up to the sky and sighed, saying heavily, "Wind and thunder destruction." Everyone who heard it changed their expressions. As people of Moyun Sky's super sects and natives, they naturally understood what the words wind and thunder destruction represented better than people of other worlds. A wisp of black smoke flew over at an extreme speed that almost surpassed the limit of speed, attaching itself onto Chu Yang's body. Chu Yang was shocked. The one who came was actually the divine spirit of the tribulation. But the weakness that the divine spirit of the tribulation was showing right now was something that Chu Yang could not believe. The divine source realm has been completely destroyed. Those people of Moyun Sky have gone crazy. The divine spirit of the tribulation panted with difficulty. "I need to heal my injuries immediately. Please prepare an independent space for me." "What independent space?" Chu Yang asked hurriedly. "What independent space do I have now? It's not that I don't have it, but I can't open it." "A space ring will do." The divine spirit of the tribulation, Mei Shangren, felt extremely unlucky. He had been looking forward to it for hundreds of thousands of years, even millions of years. It wasn't easy for him to break free from the seal and see the light of day again. He even became a legendary calamity divine soul and possessed the tyrannical strength of a sage. However, under such circumstances, things didn't go his way. He was abused, scolded, and attacked by others. At this moment, he was almost at his last gasp. Wind and thunder destruction, the treasure of a heavenly emperor, was indeed extraordinary. If he had not left his unique divine spirit imprint on Chu Yang's body in advance, he might really not have been able to travel so far to find him. If that was the case, there was really a huge possibility that his divine spirit would completely disappear from the world. But with that imprint, the divine spirit of the tribulation was able to return in the shortest time. He came to Chu Yang's side. So much so that when he came to Chu Yang's side, Meng Wuxia and the rest were still in the same place, still in the dizziness of that violent explosion. "I'm very sorry. I'm afraid I can't help you in the short term. But that General Meng is not much better. He has also been seriously injured by me. Even if he can control the wind and thunder destruction to injure me, he will have to suffer a backlash. You can't avoid being devoured by me." The divine soul of the calamity left behind these words and entered Chu Yang's space ring. Chu Yang smiled bitterly in his heart. This matter was really troublesome. First, his tribulation sword was sealed and the sword spirit could not be used. The tribulation space was also sealed. All his helpers were sealed in the tribulation space. Now, his only helper outside, the divine spirit of the tribulation, was a powerful one. He was also in the ranks of those who could not fight. Could it be that the heavenly palace is really against me and will only stop when I die? It seemed that the only one left was Yen Rushan. He was also bound by Meng Wuxia's oath. If he continued to be biased, not only would he be neglecting his duties, but he would also have to suffer the backlash of the power of heaven and earth. Chu Yang smiled bitterly and led the rest over the mountain. "Manor Lord, where are we going this time?" someone asked. "We'll turn south," Chu Yang said calmly. Then he thought of two words, Jianghu. He could not help but ask, "What is the name of the largest river in the heavenly palace?" "Are you talking about the largest river in the heavenly palace, Mist River?" Bai Yuchen asked. "Mist River?" Chu Yang looked at him questioningly. "Mist River is the largest river in the heavenly palace. The river is extremely wide. Even on a clear day, there is a thick mist on the surface of the river that does not dissipate, hence the name. It flows through the entire heavenly palace. Since ancient times, no one knows where the source of this mist river is, and no one knows where it ends up." Bai Yuchen said in a low voice. "The strangest thing about this river is that it goes through the extreme heavens and flows in an east-west direction. It goes through the heavenly palace and flows in an east-west direction. Such a situation shouldn't have existed, but it did in reality. Hence, this river is also known as the Lost River." Other than this strange thing, there is another strange thing. The topography of the Heaven Imperial Court is high in the west and low in the east. Therefore, there is a saying, the spring water flows to the east. However, this misty river flows from the west to the east. Hence, it is also known as the West River. This river has another characteristic. Because it flows through too many places, it is like 1,000 different rivers distributed in different regions. Hence, it is also known as the 1,000 Rivers. Bai Yuchen smiled bitterly. This river is known as an eternal mystery that no one in the heavenly palace has been able to solve since ancient times. And no matter where it is, there is always a thick layer of mist on the surface of the river. In the land of winter, no matter how cold the weather is, the surface of the river will never freeze. Looking at the moon on the river has a different feeling. Some people call it, 1,000 rivers have water, 1,000 rivers have moon, 1,000 rivers have fog moon, 1,000 rivers. In the land of mist, experts below the heavenly level cannot gather their cultivation at all. This is also the most important restriction and barrier between the various heavenly realms and regions, Che Shuchu added. Chu Yang nodded and took a deep breath. With an indescribable look in his eyes, he said in a low voice, "Let's go to Mist River." Jianghu. Chapter 1959. A scene suddenly appeared in Chu Yang's mind. Suddenly, his heart burned with passion. A beautiful woman in white, her clothes fluttering in the air, her features picturesque, the scene like a dream. Hidden in the clouds, I travel alone to the ends of the world. If we meet again in the clouds, I invite you to sweep away the falling flowers in Jiangnan. Jiangnan. Chu Yang took a deep breath and said, "Let's go south, to Jiangnan." Chu Yang and the others were practically flying at their maximum speed. Because everyone knew that this was already the only, the last, and the shortest bit of safe time. The enemy could catch up at any time. Perhaps they would be delayed due to the previous mishaps and misdirection, but once they really started to track them, they would definitely discover their tracks in the shortest amount of time and catch up with them as quickly as possible. The speed of a flying boat was definitely not something that a person could compare to. Its endurance was even more incomparable. For this escape, Chu Yang had specially studied the map and formulated the corresponding escape route. Before reaching Jiangnan, there were a total of 3 targets that could be used. Chu Yang had to use every one of them to the fullest. Especially those places with complicated terrains, he had to use them all the more to create misdirection. He had to get away from the enemy's line of sight step by step. And the safest place to be was undoubtedly above the Mist River. Crossing the river was never-ending. Even if there were saint-level experts there was an eternal fog that connected the heavens and the earth. They would also not be able to find the defensive lines in the north, south, east, and west. Only there was the first safe place to rest and recuperate. As for his group, would they be able to safely reach the designated resting stage? Chu Yang had no confidence at all. This was already the best escape route they had at the moment. Chu Yang had no other choice but to try it with his life. The only thing they could do now was to escape. Escape with all their might. He used all his strength to escape. As long as they could reach the Mist River before the enemy caught up with them, the terrible situation of being chased would be completely changed. At the original location of the infinite boundless mountain, a mushroom cloud rose up. The people inside suddenly realized that the entire space of the God Source realm had collapsed instantly. The infinite boundless mountain above instantly collapsed, the mountain rocks becoming catastrophic turbulence. Heaven and earth collapsed. As the timing of Meng Wuya's destruction of wind and lightning was too sudden, not only were the divine souls not on guard, the various great sects in the divine source realm were also not on guard. Deaths and injuries were unavoidable. However, the number of casualties was a little too high. Most of the cultivators from the major sects with higher cultivation had managed to escape. Although they were inevitably in a sorry state, and because of the aftershocks of the explosion, there were many who were dizzy and bleeding from their 7 orifices. However, these were still the lucky ones. At the very least, they managed to escape unscathed. The ones who suffered the heaviest casualties in this disaster were the younger generation who had accompanied them on this trip. Especially the elite disciples from the Celestial level, Green Sky Celestial, and Daluo Celestial. Under normal circumstances, they would have their seniors protecting them. Even if there was danger, it would be difficult to take their lives. However, the danger level of this accident was too high. It had already risen to the level of a battle between saints. Moreover, this accident came too suddenly. The strongest of the elders from the major sects who had accompanied them on this trip was only at the peak of the celestial being stage, half a step into the saint stage. Facing such a catastrophic accident, even they themselves were in danger. How could they care too much about others? Therefore, other than the few core disciples like Yun Tian, Mo Lu, and the Purple Emperor, the rest of the younger generation had actually suffered countless casualties. Meng Wuya. Mu Songlan was completely enraged. With a long howl, he arrived in front of Great General Meng. Great General Meng, may I ask what is the meaning of this? The leaders of the other major sects also leaped forward, looking angrily at Meng Wuya. Their losses this time were really too great. They had just entered the godly source realm and had just tasted a little bit of sweetness. The joy of this harvest had just begun. Then, the entire godly source realm was destroyed. There were even some people who had just entered some mystical cave abode and were immediately blasted out. If it was just being blasted out, or even being blasted out with heavy injuries, that would be good. Many people were directly blasted to death. How should they explain this matter? Umo Yun Sky Bulls. We all know this. But you can't be so unreasonable, right? Hai Yenbo laughed coldly and said, so what? Mo Yun Sky's people are just so tyrannical. What you can't get, others can't get. Isn't that what you mean? If your people die, other heavens and earth will also die. Those who die for you will also be buried with your people, right? It had to be said that in order to protect his subordinates, Great General Meng had no choice but to activate the destruction of wind and thunder. He had even poured in all his cultivation into this battle. This process, of course, was because he had no other choice. Because, according to the momentum of the spirit of calamity, as long as it was touched, at least a few hundred people would die unnatural deaths. Those were all his old subordinates who had been with him for thousands of years. Every one of them was his flesh and blood. At that time, the spirit of calamity was obviously going all out. Even Meng Wuya knew that he could not block it. Under his helplessness, he could only activate the destruction of wind and thunder to resist and destroy the spirit of calamity with all his might. The spirit of calamity that had reached the level of a saint had already surpassed the ordinary level. Even the powerful destruction of wind and thunder might not be able to completely suppress it. Only in the hands of Meng Wuya, who was also at the level of a saint, could he unleash the unparalleled power that could completely destroy the spirit of calamity. But because of this, just think about it, to be able to destroy the power of a saint, what kind of power did it have? Even if the main power was used to deal with and destroy the spirit of calamity, there was still the aftershock. Even if it was only 10% or 20% of the aftershock, no one in the divine source realm could withstand it. At the same time when Meng Wuya was using all his strength to activate the destruction of wind and thunder, he also endured the final and strongest counterattack from the spirit of calamity. Even after that, in order to protect the Mo Yun Sky soldiers, he endured part of the aftershock of the destruction of wind and thunder and calamity. The severity of the injury was even more serious than what the spirit of calamity had estimated. But in this situation, in the eyes of outsiders, it had many different meanings. Firstly, the situation had developed to this point. Mo Yun Tian was destined to not have a share of all the treasures in this divine source realm. Since we can't get it, then you can also forget about getting it. Secondly, other than the famous people of the older generation present, there was also a large number of elite disciples that were carefully nurtured by various sections. Previously, the elite disciples of our Mo Yun Tian's three major sects had all either died or betrayed us. Anyway, no one still belonged to Mo Yun Tian. Didn't that mean that after more than 100 years later, Our Mo Yun Tian was going to decline? How could this be possible? Therefore, take advantage of this accident, and let a large number of your elite disciples die as well. If not, even if the accident happened and Meng Wuya launched a destructive attack in order to achieve a complete victory, why didn't a few of the Mo Yun Tian soldiers around him die? They were facing the aftershock of the aftershock. It was obvious that they were prepared. Their intentions were really hateful. Extremely hateful. The resentment in the hearts of the various major sections. It was simply bristling with anger. Actually, Meng Wuya was really wronged. Previously, he had gone all out and injected all his cultivation into the destruction of wind and lightning to activate the ultimate power of the destruction of wind and lightning. Finally, he had heavily injured the divine soul of the calamity. But under the backlash of the divine soul of the calamity, he had also been heavily injured. After that, he still had to take on the aftershock of the collision. It was not that he did not want to take on more aftershocks of the collision, but that he was powerless to do so. How great was the power of a saint-level calamity divine soul? At this moment, Meng Wuya's face was like gold paper. For a moment, he was completely speechless. He only felt that when he opened his mouth, his internal organs were about to spurt out of his mouth. He could barely stand straight and looked at Mu Tsonglan indifferently. Without saying a word, he tried his best to regulate the chaotic essence energy in his chest. But in the eyes of others, this kind of expression had another layer of meaning. Good, you did such a big thing, but you didn't even give an explanation? You're too good at pretending. You used your strength to destroy the calamity divine soul of the calamity, used your strength to take on the aftershock of the collision aimed at you, and caused the death of so many of us. That's fine, every man for himself, we can understand. But you can't put on an act and pretend to spit out blood or something, to show that you have the heart but not the strength. You're standing there like a thorn, showing off in front of us? You have the cultivation of a saint level, you took on the destruction of wind and lightning, to kill an opponent of the same level, and even caused the death of so many of our elite brothers. You still want to show off how amazing you are, but you're actually unharmed. You're really too awesome. All of us will remember you. Everyone was about to explode with anger. Everyone was about to throw caution to the wind and fight. With a whoosh, the silver-armored soldiers who had preserved their strength quite well rushed forward in an orderly manner. Each of them unsheathed their swords, their faces cold and hard. They protected Great General Meng behind them. Their hawk-like eyes stared at the people from the super sects in front of them. Obviously, if the people in front of them dared to cross the line, they would draw their swords and fight. Many people's eyes turned red. Too many people had died in this big explosion. Not only the younger generation, there were also many elder-level experts who sacrificed themselves to protect their own clan. Which one of these people wasn't an old brother who had been together for thousands of years? How could their feelings not be deep? Although it was a pity that the younger generation died, although many of their efforts had gone down the drain, to the sects, as long as the core disciples didn't die, everything was fine. They could just nurture them again. This was also the fundamental reason why core disciples like Yun Tian, Mo Lu, and Zi Huang could all escape unscathed. However, the death of those elder-level experts was the greatest loss to the sections. Losing any one of them would cause a certain degree of decline in the overall strength of the sections. In this accident, the number of elders who died in each sect was as many as 20 people. This debt was really huge. In addition, their long-cherished wish for the treasure was completely gone. Everyone's hearts felt as if they had just eaten feces and then been pushed into a cesspool. That urge to kill was simply crazy and could no longer be suppressed. I'm ashamed. I've let everyone down. The one who got drunk last night was me, and the one lying under the table was also me. I feel very embarrassed. I don't even know how I came back home. I'm really depressed. With my unparalleled alcohol tolerance, I was actually drunk to such an extent by an old man. Chapter 1960. Well done, Meng Wuya. You have the cultivation of a saint. No one in our alliance is a match for you. We admit defeat. However, from now on, our Sky Sword Alliance and you, Mo Yun Tian, will be irreconcilable. Mu Zonglan carried Yun Tian, who had fainted from the shock, and said fiercely, "Just wait for the Lord Sage's revenge. If we can't deal with you, there will naturally be people who can. Let's go." Mu Zonglan was filled with hatred as he left. To be honest, he really wanted to fight it out with Meng Wuya here. Even if he knew that he couldn't win, he still wanted to fight with his life. However, at this moment, Yun Tian's body was injured and he was unconscious. No one could bear the consequences of his treatment being delayed. Furthermore, other than those who were already dead, those who were lucky enough to survive were mostly injured. As for the Mo Yun Tian soldiers, under the protection of Meng Wuya, their battle strength was almost unharmed. Fighting with the enemy here was definitely not a wise choice. It was just seeking death. They could only leave temporarily and settle the score in the future. Meng Wuya was anxious. He was about to say something when he felt a surge of blood rushing up his head. Stars appeared in front of his eyes. He quickly stabilized his mind and suppressed his blood pressure. But Mu Zonglan had already left with his men. "We, the Earth's core pavilion, cannot stand your way of doing things. We, the pavilion, will naturally settle the score with you today." The skeleton spirit of the Earth's core pavilion said coldly and strode away. "Fortunately, we were not friends in the past. What's even more fortunate is that we will not be friends in the future. Goodbye." Xue Xian did not say a word. She snorted fiercely. Her slim figure flew into the sky and turned into a rainbow. "Let's go." The people from the various sects left one by one, leaving not a single person behind. Especially the few sects that carried the corpses. Their eyes were filled with hatred, which made Mo Yuntian's men feel even more fearful. Most of the corpses had been destroyed along with the destruction of the God Source realm. These corpses that were carried away had luckily escaped from the cave. But because their injuries were too severe, they could not be treated. This score naturally had to be recorded on Mo Yuntian's men. He was even more hateful than those who had died in the realm of the Divine Source. Those who had died in the realm of the Divine Source due to unexpected circumstances. Although he knew that there was no luck, there was no direct observation. However, the people who had just died in front of him were the biggest direct observation. How could he not gnash his teeth in hatred? At this point, the misunderstanding had been completely forged, and there was no turning back. Rupture. Breaking ties with all the super sects in the world in one go. After this battle, all the super sects in the world were completely offended. Chu Yang's detonation of the soul-suppressing stone did not achieve the desired effect. However, at the last moment, Meng Wuya's shocking explosion had caused all the conflicts to intensify. Everyone had already left. After a long while, Meng Wuya finally let out a sigh of relief. His face turned as white as paper. He waved his hand and shouted, "Let's go! Chase after them." "Where do you think you're going?" On the other side, Yen Russian was ghastly pale. "General Yen, what else do you want?" Meng Wuya frowned and looked at Yen Russian. Yen Russian was an anomaly in this battle of the realm of the Divine Source. As Yen Russian and the 5,000 men that he had led were far away from the core of the battle, and they were not like the other sects who had wantonly plundered for treasures, they were already on their guard and reacted quickly. Moreover, Yen Russian had gone all out and used his peak heavenly being cultivation as a cover. Although many of the 5,000 men from the Eastern Royal Heavens were injured, and some were even seriously injured, none of them had died. This could be said to be a great fortune among the misfortune. General Meng's destruction of wind and thunder was really awe-inspiring. It shook the 4 seas and thousands of mountains, and shook the entire world. Yen Russian coughed and said indifferently, "However, my 5,000 men were also injured because of this. Even though I understand General Meng's actions, and I also understand that the aftermath of this attack wasn't targeted at us, the result of this incident is that you, General Meng, caused our innocent troops to be injured. If I, Yen Russian, don't get an explanation, how will my brothers look at me when I return?" Yen Russian's words were sharp. However, Meng Wuya understood that rather than seeking an explanation, it was better to say that he was stalling for time. His original intention was definitely not to seek compensation. However, his words made the eyes of the Eastern Royal Heavens soldiers light up. Chief Yen was indeed a good person. Meng Wuya forcefully suppressed the surging blood in his chest and said indifferently, "This is what I should do. Since your troops were injured, I should compensate." As he spoke, he waved his hand and someone came forward. He held a few space rings. Meng Wuya picked one up and passed it to Yen Russian. "Here are 200,000 purple coins. I don't know much about this, but this is a token of my appreciation. I am away from home and can't bring so much wealth with me. When I return to the Eastern Royal Heavens, I will definitely compensate you." Yen Russian said, "Since this is the case, please allow me to report this matter to General Meng and let him make the decision. I am also guilty for causing such injuries. General, please don't make things difficult for me." He made it sound even more beautiful, but he still wanted to delay. Meng Wuya's eyes lit up. "General? Is it General Lan?" Yen Russian was startled. He said, "Who is the general? This is a secret. General Meng, why are you asking?" Yen Russian was really doing everything he could to stall for time for Chu Yang. He said all kinds of tricks and all kinds of words. Meng Wuya's casual question was elevated to the level of spying on military secrets. Yen Russian's level of intelligence was obviously getting closer and closer to Chu Yang's. Otherwise, how could they be sworn brothers? Perhaps this was the so-called one who stays with ink stains, and one who stays with pig stinks? Meng Wuya stared at him for a while and said, "I have misspoken just now. General, please be magnanimous and don't take it to heart. I will have to trouble General Yen to report this matter." After he finished speaking, he sat down and treated his injuries as if no one else was around. He knew that with Yen Russian and Chu Yang's relationship, Yen Russian would definitely stall for time. The more he argued with Yen Russian, the longer Yen Russian would stall for time. Moreover, the Eastern Royal Heavens military was obviously hostile to him. Since that's the case, he might as well listen to everything you say. But as long as I capture Chu Yang, I don't care if I have to suffer some grievances or humiliation. Anyway, as long as I behave myself, it will be difficult for the Eastern Royal Heavens to find fault with me. Go and report to your general that I should take this time to treat my injuries. My injuries are not light. The sooner I recuperate, the fewer problems there will be." One had to admit that Meng Wuya's tactic was to deal with all kinds of changes by sticking to the status quo. This was the most suitable way to deal with it. Above the clouds, General Lan listened to Yen Russian's report and couldn't help but feel conflicted. This Meng Wuya was obviously going to carry out the no resistance and cooperation policy to the end. "I will do whatever you want me to do, as long as you let me catch the culprit." How could he fight with such a person? There was no way to fight at all. Even if he didn't care about anything and brought the army to bear, he would definitely give the order to not resist. He would let you capture him and even let you kill him. But you can't really kill him just like that, right? He was here for revenge. There was nothing wrong with revenge. And he was here on the orders of the emperor. There was no way to fight at all. You set up any obstacles and obstructions for him, and he would obey. He would let you obstruct him. He wouldn't resist at all. You asked him for money, and he would give it to you without a second thought. You asked him to stop, and he would stop immediately. How are you going to make things difficult for him? When did this Meng Wuya become so shameless? How brilliant! General Lan only felt that his fighting spirit had soared, but his fist had hit nothing but air. Motherfucker, you can't pull it out or roll it into a ball. It's like a piece of meat that can't be steamed or boiled. Another general waved his fist in frustration. He was speechless. And this kind of, fuck, if I were an old man, I would have fucking fought with him long ago. Why are you still wasting your time? Then you would have been buried long ago. General Lan glared at him and said, "Let's hurry up and think of a way to make them fight with us." Everyone frowned and thought hard. After a while, they all shook their heads and sighed. How can we fight with a coward? Even if we fight, it's meaningless. A general said what was on everyone's mind. Everyone sighed together. Emperor Donghuang did give orders, but they didn't violate the rules of the Donghuang heavens. What else do you want them to do? They can be unreasonable and shameless, but we can't. At least we have to look good on the surface. General Lan rubbed his chin. He was at his wit's end. Yen Russian said, "Why don't we keep delaying? Anyway, we can't let them capture Chu Yang." General Lan sighed. "We can't keep dragging this out. We have to have a reason to justify it. You have to know that this is a grudge between the celestial emperors. On the other hand, it's a dispute in the pugilistic world. If we stop them from taking revenge and use such despicable means, that would be our fault." Yen Russian said, "But their actions are punishable by death in the Donghuang heavens. How can they still have the face to take revenge?" General Lan sighed. "Brother, these little bastards, which one of them isn't lawless? Do you think you can control the youngest master of the Donghuang heavens?" Yen Russian's face darkened. "That's completely different." "You can say that it's different, but what's the difference if you say it's the same?" General Lan pondered for a while and said, "How about this? Send people to keep a close watch. Also, set up a few more checkpoints and try to delay as much time as possible. As long as they don't make a move against the officials, don't harass the commoners, and only capture Chu Yang, let them be for the time being." Yen Russian was anxious and stepped forward. "General Lan, let's think about it again." Chapter 1961. Great General Lan's complexion sank. Then he said, "Russian, I know that Chu Yang is your sworn brother. But he had also inexplicably encountered this incident. He hasn't died yet, but his clan has already been defeated. To be honest, I really want to help him. Otherwise, I wouldn't have let go of so many generals and only let you go. Originally from P, but he has to bear the consequences of what he did. No one is an exception. We have already helped Mo Yuntian a lot by setting up barriers layer by layer for him. If we directly stand out, that would be clearly obstructing a celestial emperor's revenge. Some things, it's better for people to know, not for people to see." General Lan said earnestly, "If that's really the case, what do you think the consequences will be? But Chu Yang's strength is really too weak now. Even if we increase the barriers by 10 times, I'm afraid he won't be able to escape from Mo Yuntian's pursuit." Yen Russian said anxiously, "This can't be helped. This is already the limit of what we can do. The rest can only depend on Chu Yang's own luck." General Lan closed his eyes. "We also have to have our own perseverance." Yen Russian stood there for a long time, his face ashen. At this point, it was as if he had said everything. Since Mo Yuntian's men didn't dare to be presumptuous, General Lan also wouldn't go overboard. But the only unlucky person could only be Chu Yang. If Shui Leihan knew of General Lan's decision at this moment, he would definitely vomit blood. "Idiot. You've completely misunderstood my intentions. If it was only because of Mo Yuntian's action of mobilizing troops, why would I have made the decision to go to war with him? Even to the extent of personally confronting Yuan Tianjie when necessary? My main objective, or rather, my only objective, is to protect Chu Yang. Old Lan, you've always understood my intentions the best. Why did you have to be so muddle-headed this time? You can't even differentiate between master and subordinate. It seems like I've wronged you to say that you're an idiot, but you're an idiot this time. Actually, this matter was also really a bit strange. The tacit understanding accumulated over hundreds of thousands of years. General Lan shouldn't have misunderstood Donghuang's intentions at all. But he just had to misunderstand at such a crucial moment. This was like the will of the underworld, completely irresistible, irreversible, unchangeable. General Lan watched Yen Russian leave dejectedly. There was a hint of a smile at the corner of his eyes. He thought to himself, Chu Yang has a lot of tricks up his sleeves. How can he be caught so easily? At the very least, that mysterious spirit beast by his side wasn't easy to deal with. Thinking back to the time when he had let that spirit beast bring back the purple crystal jade essence, Great General Lan was filled with anticipation. I really don't know how powerful that spirit beast can be. That's a mutated spirit beast that I've never seen in my entire life. That spirit beast was, of course, extremely powerful. It was indeed unfathomable. Furthermore, it was a rare spiritual object in the world. But General Lan didn't know that the spirit beast was already in a certain place, unable to come out. The Eastern Royal Skies army retreated. Meng Wuya gave his first order, chase. There was only one word. Behind him, four people carried out a small palanquin. Meng Wuya floated onto it. The four people carried Meng Wuya and sprinted all the way. Their speed was actually not slower than the others running at full speed. Meng Wuya coughed violently and used his sleeves to cover his face. He secretly spat out a large mouthful of blood. Although he had already adjusted his breathing for a moment, if he didn't spit out this mouthful of blood from his internal injuries, it would have a huge impact on his injuries. Previously, it wasn't that he didn't want to spit it out. It was that he couldn't and didn't dare to spit it out. With so many strong enemies surrounding him, the news of his serious injuries was too much of a matter of life and death. If the enemies saw that he was injured and could no longer do anything, the consequences would be truly unimaginable. Not to mention anything else, if those people from the super sects knew that he couldn't do anything, just these people alone would be enough to bury his 10,000-strong army here. What they were worried about was nothing more than his reputation as a sage. There was also the destruction of wind and lightning. With the addition of the destruction of wind and lightning, the power that he could display was enough to look down on the world. Therefore, although the various super sects had suffered great losses, they still had to swallow their anger for the time being. Even if the Eastern Royal Heavens Army didn't go on a killing spree, it was still because they were afraid of this killing weapon of his. If there were too many casualties, even if they could destroy the 10,000 people on his side, the gains would not make up for the losses. General, this time, we've completely broken off relations with all the super sections. Will it? One of the generals carrying the palanquin asked softly. Meng Wuya swallowed a large amount of pills and said weakly, "Do you think that I used the destruction of wind and lightning because I was afraid that we would lose too many people? You're wrong. How would you know that the power of that calamity spirit had already far exceeded my expectations? Just by himself, he could entangle all of us. In fact, if we continued to grind until the end, he would be able to grind all of us to death. The cultivation of that calamity spirit was about the same as mine. In fact, his cultivation was even slightly higher than mine. Even if I used all my strength, I wouldn't be able to stop him. And most importantly, his soul has the characteristic of being immortal. If it wasn't for the destruction of wind and lightning, I'm afraid that we would have really returned in defeat. If that was really the case, the consequences would be truly unimaginable. Meng Wuya paused tiredly. When I took out the destruction of wind and lightning, I also thought about it. In fact, I even wavered. However, offending these super sects is still better than losing all of us. It's better than offending the officials of the Eastern Royal Heavens. The reason why I'm willing to compromise is because I want to complete the mission given to me by the Emperor. As for what happens in the future, I can't care so much now. Meng Wuya coughed and said, "The super sects are ultimately still sections. As for us, we are the officials. I believe that they won't dare to do anything. As long as our Heavenly Emperor is still around, even if they have the guts, they definitely won't dare to openly go against our Mo Yuntian. Therefore, at most, they can only say a few harsh words and leave." Meng Wuya smiled faintly. "Now, our goal is the Chu clan's courtyard." "Yes." Reporting to the great general, the Chu clan's courtyard is right in front of us. However, the situation inside seems to be different. What's wrong? There's a group of people waiting in front. These people are the people from the two great sects who came out with us earlier. Bring them over. Meng Wuya's eyes flashed with dense killing intent. Not long after, those people were brought in front of Great General Meng. Sinners greet the Great General. More than 200 people knelt down together the moment they saw each other. Their intention to bow and scrape was obvious. Meng Wuya half reclined in the palanquin and said coldly, "You still have the face to see me? Sinners don't dare. However, sinners have something to report." One of them knelt and crawled 2 steps forward. "We have long regretted our actions, but we were forced to stay here in the Eastern Royal Immortal Realms. Today, it's fortunate that Great General Tian is here, allowing us to find an opportunity. We hope that Great General Tian will show mercy and show mercy. Meng Wuya looked at the kneeling people and felt annoyed and angry. He said coldly, "What qualifications do you have? What qualifications do you have to make me pity you?" That person was overjoyed and said flatteringly, "Great General, during this period of time, we pretended to surrender and infiltrated the Chu clan. That bastard Chu Yang thought that we were on the same side, so he didn't hide anything from us. We know what Chu Yang is relying on and some of his escape routes. We hope that it will be of help to you, Great General Meng." Relying on? Escape routes? What are they? Meng Wuya frowned. Yes. What they are relying on is nothing more than. Seeing that the great general was actually interested in listening to his story, the man couldn't help but be overjoyed. He thought that there was hope for him to escape and atone for his crimes with a meritorious deed. He poured out everything he knew. Chu Yang's backer is a mysterious expert? He has countless treasures? Meng Wuya frowned and thought, is his cultivation unfathomably high? Is he the real owner of the auction? Chu Yang's wife and family members disappeared mysteriously? Did they go to find an escape route? Did they go west this time? Their escape route must not be far? Is it nearby? Meng Wuya looked up and thought hard. After a long time, he said, "Do you think that I am a child? Do you think that I will believe your nonsense? If he really has such a backer, why did he run away? He could have just killed me and there would be no more worries. If he really prepared an escape route and you didn't follow him, why did he let you know? Why did he let me find a trace? Chu Yang left you here to use you. He didn't ask you to stop him. He clearly asked you to stall for time. As long as I ask you a question, every word that you say will buy time for Chu Yang to escape. Your information must be true and false. But once I believe your information, whether it is true or false, I will fall into Chu Yang's follow-up trap and fall into his trap. That way, it will buy more time for Chu Yang to escape. You damned bastards! Idiots who waste my time." The more Meng Wuya thought about it, the angrier he felt. It was because this bunch of bastards failed to protect him and let him be killed that he crossed thousands of miles to come here. And after coming here, he encountered a series of mishaps, a series of troubles, a series of humiliations. He had been unyielding for hundreds of thousands of years, but here, he could only helplessly become a spineless coward. Because if he didn't do this, he wouldn't be able to protect the soldiers under him. If he didn't do this, he would definitely not be able to complete the Heavenly Emperor's task. If he didn't do this, he would even drag the two big worlds into the flames of war. But who could know, who could understand the many grievances in his heart? Am I, Meng Wuya, really a person without a temper? Chapter 1962. Previously, he had no choice but to explode and destroy the godly source realm, but wasn't it also a way for Meng Wuya to vent his anger? Am I really afraid of you? I also have the determination to perish together with you. And all of this was caused by these bastards in front of him. Now, these bastards who were used by Chu Yang actually delayed my time again. This is unforgivable. Meng Wuya was furious. Kill them all. Cut off their heads and report back. The order was like a bolt from the blue. Those people were immediately dumbfounded. This result was far beyond their expectations. Update P. What's going on? We have already said everything. Why do you still want to kill? But before they could figure it out, the swords and sabers were already near them. General Meng, why are you doing this? The leader's face was filled with shock and despair. No need to say more. Kill without mercy. Meng Wuya did not even say a word. He directly waved his hand and gave the order to kill. It was only a short resistance, but they were all slaughtered. Black Cloud Guards, send out 1,000 people. Divide into 10 small teams and search towards the west first. Be quick. Yes. 1,000 Black Cloud Guards obeyed the order and quickly left the large group. They rushed forward and divided into 10 small groups according to different directions. Then, they disappeared in a flash like arrows leaving the bowstring. Enter the Chu clan's courtyard and see if there are any clues left behind. Meng Wuya took a deep breath. Some things could be distinguished at a glance whether they were true or not. This Chu Yang is really not simple. Although he is young, he is far-sighted. Meng Wuya walked in the empty Chu clan's courtyard. Looking at the facilities, flowers and decorations everywhere, he could not help but sigh. Here and here. There should have been artificial mountains, ponds, gardens, flowers and plants, but these facilities have all been leveled. They are all used as martial arts practice grounds. Meng Wuya sighed. There is no place to enjoy here. There is only boredom. General, is there anything strange about this place? An officer beside him asked puzzledly. Don't you understand? There are many martial artists in the Heaven territory. It is not strange to have a place to practice martial arts. Cultivation is a dry and tedious thing to begin with. But even in our military camp, which is almost the most monotonous and boring place in the world, there are still some recreational activities, even things like climbing high and jumping low. It's also a form of entertainment for the soldiers in the barracks. It's better than nothing. But here, there is nothing. Meng Wuya was lost in thought. Barren land with nothing, only a piece of land that is getting harder and harder with each passing day. This is a mark caused by pure practice. Look at the ground outside. Is it the same as here? What Chu Yang pursues? Meng Wuya closed his eyes and said with some pain, is perfection. And the peak? After checking Chu Yang's study room and bedroom, Meng Wuya sighed from the bottom of his heart in pain. If Chu did SSSS. Because he has the tenacity and perseverance that most people don't have. The only thing he lacks is the time and space to grow. Meng Wuya sighed softly. In my life, I have experienced hundreds of thousands of years. But when it comes to this kind of person who completely abandoned all pleasure to cultivate and has only one goal, I have only seen a few people. Such a person is destined to become a legend. But today, I have come specially to destroy this legend. If I destroy him like this, then all the sweat and effort Chu Yang has put in the past will be a pity. But I have to do it. This is the helplessness of life. Meng Wuya shook his head and said, Chase. Sighing was sighing, admiring was admiring, but what should be done must be done. And it must be done. Board the airship. Chase at full speed. Chu Yang passed through a forest while leading everyone. He issued an order while running, everyone, divide into 5 teams with roughly equal numbers. You will pass through the forest from different directions. You can't stop along the way. You can't change your speed. You don't need to hide your tracks. But you must make sure to breathe evenly. And you must apply the sap on your body. More than 200 people spontaneously divided into 5 groups. They rushed into the forest. It was like 5 huge dragons were wreaking havoc in the forest. 20 miles away, the Green Mountain Range. Also, get there as fast as you can. Chu Yang shouted. Like a whirlwind, Chu Yang took the lead. Now, he could only feel that the endless spiritual energy in the tribulation space was still continuously washing over him. The hidden medicinal efficacy of the miraculous heaven and earth creation elixir that was originally contained in his body was also slowly activating. His cultivation was slowly rising. He was now at the peak of the saint level. He was only one step away from reaching the Deva realm. All he needed was an opportunity. But Chu Yang was not in the mood to think about this. He knew very well that even if he reached the peak of the heavenly human level in one go, it would be useless. As long as he was caught, he would still die. The group of people were like 5 small, meandering dragons, flying into the verdant mountain range. At this point, the 5 groups of people once again merged into one, forming a single group. After confirming that everyone had climbed over the mountain, Chu Yang stopped without warning. The long sword in his hand flashed out. With a plop, a deep stone was dug out of the ground. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Chu Yang did not stop. Sword chi rushed out crazily. The stones below were cut open piece by piece and thrown up. In just a few breaths of time, there was already a very narrow hole that was over 1,000 feet deep. Is the Manor Lord planning to hide here? Everyone looked at their surroundings and couldn't help but be overjoyed. This was a very, very inconspicuous hidden canyon. It was surrounded by a dense forest. The trees were hundreds of feet tall. It was desolate and uninhabited. If they hid here for a period of time, and everyone was now covered in tree sap, their aura was basically the same as the original aura here. They might not be discovered. This was really a good hiding place worth a try. Just as they thought so, they saw Chu Yang's hands and feet move at the same time. He actually put back the stones that had just been dug out. His movements were gentle. Those stones, which weighed at least tens of thousands of pounds, fell to the ground without making any sound or vibrating. Huff, huff, huff. Everyone was stunned. Big brother, what are you doing? You worked so hard to come here just to dig a hole and then fill it up? Is it fun? We are running for our lives now. What do you mean by doing this? Don't you know that wasting time now is wasting lives? And you are not just wasting your life, you are wasting all of our lives. In the blink of an eye, someone who was wasting lives had finished what he wanted to do. He finally stopped wasting everyone's lives. With a whoosh, dust flew into the air and swirled around in the air, completely covering the area. Then he said, "Let's go." Everyone was confused, but they could only follow. At this time, they definitely could not fight among themselves. Wasting a little life was a waste. Who asked them to have such an unreliable master? This time, Chu Yang led everyone into a dense forest. He was strict and repeatedly reminded, no one is allowed to touch branches or trees. No one is allowed to emit their own scent. No one is allowed to leak any aura of life. Everything must be sealed with saint-level strength. No stepping on the grass. No disturbing the birds and so on. This series of orders made everyone suffer greatly. But they still did not dare to disobey. To be honest, if not for the fact that everyone's cultivation had reached saint level and above, it would not be easy to do what Chu Yang said. More than 200 people walking in the forest. No stepping on trees? No touching branches? No disturbing birds? He could only float over like a ghost. Under such scruples, his speed would definitely be extremely slow. Wasn't this delaying their escape time? They were still wasting lives. Just now, they were wasting everyone's lives. Now, they were dragging us along to waste our lives together. Everyone did not dislike Chu Yang's actions. No one would believe that. But everyone had already made a blood oath before escaping. They swore to obey all of Chu Yang's orders without any compromise. At this moment, they could only obey and continue to waste their lives. They had been walking in the forest in this ghostly state for about half an hour. Suddenly, Chu Yang clasped his hands together and pushed. An aura that carried Chu Yang's unique aura silently rushed forward in a straight line. It was as if a large group of people was rushing through here. But after Chu Yang released this palm, he immediately changed the direction of his advance and floated towards the east. Everyone followed closely. Suddenly, there was the sound of flowing water in front of them. Just as they got out, they saw a river flowing slowly from the foot of the mountain to the south. As the nearby mountains were all made of soil, and it had just rained, the river water was very muddy. Chu Yang did not hesitate at all. He said in a low voice, "Everyone follow me. Stop breathing temporarily and turn to internal breathing." Then he took the lead and landed in the air. Behind him, more than 200 people did not hesitate. They flew down at the same time like big birds and landed in the river water. It must be said that the strength of this group of people led by Chu Yang was quite impressive. Such a large group of people entered the water at the same time, but they were almost silent. In fact, they didn't even cause a splash. Everyone had entered the river in an instant and dived to the bottom. This river wasn't very deep. The shallowest part was only the depth of a person and a half. Chu Yang lay flat on the bottom of the river and kept his body motionless. Then he started to circulate his internal breathing. He relied only on a little movement of the soles of his feet to make his body follow the flow of the river and move forward rapidly. Chapter 1963. All of them were astute people. They immediately came to their senses and followed Chu Yang's example. They stuck their bodies close to the bottom of the water and moved forward just like that. Without a doubt, this was an excellent escape route. Although they were puzzled as to why Chu Yang had dug that hole previously, after entering the water, everyone had an invisible sense of safety as for whether or not they could escape alive this time. They finally had a little more confidence. At least they wouldn't waste their lives and everyone's lives anymore. After that, it was only the time it took for an incense stick to burn before the ink cloud guards arrived in an overwhelming manner. Previously, they had clearly widened the distance between them and Yen Russian had bought so much time for them. But the reality was so cruel. The distance that should have been very far was now only the time it took for an incense stick to burn. Even the ink cloud guards had a feeling of contempt in their hearts. It was really too easy. It was unexpectedly easy. Did the general think too highly of this Chu Yang, or was our tracking ability too strong? These people were all first-rate veterans in the martial world. Each of them was extremely experienced. It didn't take much effort to track them down, and they soon found the real escape route of Chu Yang and the others. Although this Chu Yang was also a talent, he was ultimately still too inexperienced. Did you think that you, little four, could deceive us veterans who had roamed the world for tens of thousands of years? In our eyes, those childish tricks of yours are simply laughable. They're no better than a monkey show. The ink cloud guards had initially divided into 5 groups. After confirming the other party's escape route, they did not even divide their forces to investigate. Because there was no need to. Everything was already under their control. Further away, 3 flying boats had already soared into the sky. With an aura of destruction, they came from the sky, gradually approaching. After discovering the traces of the ink cloud guards, the flying boats paused for a moment. Then, more than 2,000 people descended from the sky. After confirming that the people who should be dispatched for this trip had left the airships, the 3 airships didn't stay any longer. They flew over everyone's heads and flew off into the distance. Clearly, they were heading to a certain path ahead to wait for them. Meng Wuya was still sitting on the soft couch and drifting down. This time, it was the silver-armored soldiers and the ink cloud guards that descended. Even though they were in midair, they still strictly maintained the integrity of their formation, not a single hair out of place. Have you found anything yet? Meng Wuya asked. Yes. Reporting to the general, Chu Yang and the others should have escaped along this road. First, they set up a deceptive formation in many places, and then the whole group headed west. Then, he turned around halfway and began to head south. Although we've tried our best to advance cautiously, there are still traces to be found. It's not difficult to search for them. An ink cloud guard commander reported. Meng Wuya was a bit surprised. In his heart, he knew that Chu Yang was a person with a character like this. It shouldn't be so easy to track him down. After pondering for a moment, he asked, "Are you sure?" This subordinate dares to guarantee with my head that there are absolutely no mistakes. The ink cloud guard commander said loudly. All right. Keep chasing. This time, the total number of people had increased to 3,000, and it was still the same 1,000 ink cloud guards that led the chase. Looking at the forest in front of them, every ink cloud guard had a look of contempt in their eyes. According to these people's habit of escaping, he had definitely entered the forest. When they got closer, they took a look. Almost everyone was about to laugh out loud. As expected, they have entered this forest with the intention of covering their tracks. Don't they know that slight traces in the forest are more eye-catching when searching for experts? After a simple inspection, they immediately came to a conclusion. Not only did they enter the forest, but they also split into 5 groups. When they entered, they even used a large number of trees to squeeze out sap. Squeezed out sap? Can you confirm this? Meng Wuya was even more puzzled. How could Chu Yang make such a low-level mistake? Why did they squeeze out sap? Was there a need to ask? The answer was obvious. They must have wanted to smear their bodies with sap and go deep into the forest to catch the breath of the forest to cover their tracks. It's an extremely stupid idea, the ink cloud guard commander said confidently. Not necessarily. Meng Wuya frowned. Everything went smoothly when they tracked him to this place. But because it was too smooth, it made Meng Wuya feel that this matter was a little unusual. Whether it's true or not, we'll know later. The 3,000 people also split into 5 groups and entered the forest along the route that Chu Yang and the others had taken. After searching all the way out of the forest, everyone's face was a little relaxed. Following the traces, everyone chased in and then reunited here. This showed that whether they split up or went in circles in the forest, it was all a trick. They had already reached this point, but Chu Yang was still deliberately setting up a formation. In fact, it was a trashy trick that was so low level that it made one's hair stand on end. Only Meng Wuya's frown deepened. Why was it like this? Sir, Chu Yang and the others should have entered the mountain in front. The Ink Cloud Guard commander pointed to the verdant mountain in front and said, "This mountain stretches for thousands of miles and is very majestic. I think they should have found a way to escape from here." Meng Wuya did not say anything more. The group hurried forward. It had to be said that the experienced people in Jianghu were indeed experienced. The path that they took was exactly the same as the one that Chu Yang and the others had taken. Moreover, although they were extremely cautious in their pursuit, the speed of these people was at least twice as fast as Chu Yang and the others. This was also one of the major reasons why they could shorten the distance between the two so quickly. The 3,000 people swept up to the top of the mountain like a whirlwind. "Sir, they should have entered the forest in front from here." The Ink Cloud Guard commander stood at the top of the mountain and pointed in a direction, full of confidence. Meng Wuya looked over and gently shook his head. Then, he carefully observed the terrain in front of him. Suddenly, his expression tensed up and he said, "Over there. Let's go and take a look." There was a small canyon in front of him. It was surrounded on all sides by towering trees. There was only a very small area, and it was very difficult for people to find it. At this moment, this canyon was peaceful, and there were no traces of anyone entering it. Meng Wuya frowned and looked at this canyon. Finally, his eyes looked at a certain place. There was a stone that was only the size of a fingernail. It looked like it was cut open by a sword. One side of it actually emitted a light that was as bright as metal. Meng Wuya opened his hand, and a whooshing sound was heard. The small stone fell into his palm from several tens of feet away. Carefully stroking the cut, Meng Wuya took a deep breath. He said, "Although this stone is not as hard as the stones in the realm of the God Source, it is still quite sturdy." The stones in the nearby mountains, all of which were placed in the open, all have some traces of wind and frost corrosion. But on this stone, there is only a little dust. There are no traces of corrosion. Why is this? What does it mean? Meng Wuya said. Could it be the stone under the surface of the ground? The Ink Cloud Guard commander asked hesitantly. It is the stone under the surface of the ground. Meng Wuya said indifferently, but why would the stone under the ground appear here? According to what you said, no one has been here before. But there is a stone under the ground that jumped out on its own? Can you tell me the reason? The Ink Cloud Guard commander's face turned red. It is my fault for not observing carefully. A slight difference can determine success or failure. This stone is so hard. But it had been sliced open by something in such a smooth pattern that it had been sliced open. It must be a divine weapon. Meng Wuya said indifferently, and I heard that Chu Yang has such a divine weapon. Yes. Then, in such a tense place, Chu Yang actually had the time to dig out a stone from the ground with a divine weapon and even used a sword to cut it. Is he really so free? Meng Wuya looked at the commander with sharp eyes. Yes, I was careless. The commander was sweating profusely. Sure enough, the details determine success or failure. Everyone, let's move together and roll up this piece of land. Find out the strangeness of this place. Meng Wuya ordered indifferently. The next moment, with a whoosh, all the dust on the surface of this piece of land was rolled up. It moved horizontally for several hundred feet and landed on an empty piece of land. There is a discovery here. A silver-armored soldier shouted. There was no need for him to shout. Everyone saw it. In that natural depression, there was a thin gap. Perhaps ordinary people wouldn't see it. Even if they saw it by chance, they wouldn't pay much attention to it. But the people here were at least saint-level experts. Naturally, they could see it at a glance. I'm afraid that they dug a hole here. Could it be that they are hiding here? The Ink Cloud Guard commander's voice trembled a little. Meng Wuya said, there is a big possibility. At first, they used the rookie's escape trick to deceive you and make you think that it was easy to track them. Then, they smeared the sap on themselves and made you think that they were escaping into the depths of the forest. But at such a moment, they dug such a hidden cave here. Meng Wuya sighed. If it were you, I'm afraid that you would have chased them for several hundred miles by now, right? The commander's face turned red. He was embarrassed and speechless. If you chased them for several hundred miles but couldn't find them and couldn't find any trace of them, what would you do? Meng Wuya asked. I would choose to continue chasing. After all, they are quite strong. There is a certain possibility that we can't catch up with them. So, if we continue chasing, then... The commander's voice became smaller and smaller. Cough, let's talk about something. Because tomorrow is my aunt's 81st birthday, I definitely can't write tomorrow. Then, we have a YY activity tomorrow night. So, I don't have any time tomorrow. So, I'll work overtime tonight and finish 2 chapters. Tomorrow, I'm afraid it won't be possible. I'll start the day after tomorrow. Thank you for your understanding. Chapter 1964. By the time you come to your senses and know how to turn back, I'm afraid they will have already gone to God knows where. Meng Wuya smiled as he taught, how can there be such a foolish enemy in this world? Especially when this enemy is so daring to kill such an incredible person? If it were you, would you use such a foolish escape tactic? Definitely not. That commander's face was full of shame. This subordinate thanks the general for his teachings. Meng Wuya nodded. Okay, quickly dig this place out. In fact, I even suspect that they may not necessarily be here. But digging will definitely yield new clues. A few Ink Cloud guards stepped forward. In addition, a few hundred Ink Cloud guards formed a large circle. Everyone activated their full cultivation. They were ready to attack at any time. Some of them had already revealed excitement and cruelty in their eyes. They thought that there was a great chance that Chu Yang and the others were down there. They thought that they would be able to capture them in one fell swoop. That kind of surprised look on their faces. They couldn't help but feel very happy in their hearts. A huge rock was moved out, and everyone felt a chill. This huge rock weighed no less than hundreds of thousands of pounds. To think that it could be cut out without a sound. This formation, then another piece, and another piece, and another one, going back and forth like this, they slowly went down hundreds of feet. Chu Yang is definitely not down here. Meng Wuya sighed. Even I fell for his evil trick. This is really terrible. Although Great General Meng had spoken, the soldiers were still unwilling to give up. They had already been moving for such a long time. What if there were some useful clues at the bottom? With this mentality, they finally dug to the bottom of this big hole. At the very bottom, it was a flat rock, and there was a line of words carved on it with the tip of a sword. Brother, are you tired after moving this rock for so long? Sincerely, it's been hard on you. Bastard. The Ink Cloud guard who had been carefully moving the rock for fear of any loss or destruction of the clues was furious. He raised his hand and was about to smash this rock into powder. Wait. Meng Wuya carefully looked at these 10 to 20 words. These words are very sloppy. Obviously, he was in a hurry when he wrote it. Especially the last word, he didn't even finish writing it. It was as if he had just brushed it off. Meng Wuya frowned. The situation should have been like this at that time. Once he led his men here, he immediately began to set up this place. I even suspect that he had chosen this place to confuse us. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to set it up so smoothly. After setting it up, he immediately fled and covered it with a shallow layer of soil. I reckon that it was just a flick of his sleeve before he left. General, this little Chu Yang really has such a scheme. He's really outstanding. I hope that he made a plan in advance. If he just acted according to the situation and accidentally found that this place was suitable for setting up bait, then he set up this trap. If that was the case, then this person's intelligence was too terrifying. He had casually arranged everything, and everything was natural. He had calculated every step of the way. If it weren't for the fact that such an enemy's strength was far inferior to ours, if the difference in strength is only about the same, I'm afraid we'll all die without a burial ground. All the generals were shocked when they heard Meng Wuya's analysis. General, you're right. However, the situation now is that we're chasing and he's fleeing. Our strength has the absolute upper hand. As long as we can eliminate this scourge before he grows strong, it won't be too late. These words are reasonable. However, where will he go next? Meng Wuya pondered. He cautiously observed the surrounding dense forest. He didn't even let go of the side where he and his men came from. Then his eyes flickered. He was actually hesitant. He said, "Bai Chen, try to imitate him. Try to think from Chu Yang's point of view." Bai Chen was a general of the silver-armored soldiers. He had reached the heavenly being level. He was also Meng Wuya's trusted aide. He had extraordinary intelligence and was highly trusted by Meng Wuya. He retreated a few steps and entered the forest from outside like a shooting star. Before he could even stabilize himself, the long sword in his hand had already condensed into a sword intent and flew out. Shwa shwa shwa. Immediately, a large piece of rock was dug out by him, and he threw it out soundlessly with his hand. Then he continued to dig until he was as deep as the rock. Then he flew up into the air. He waved his sword and carved a few words. Then he flew out with the help of inertia. He added the rocks that he had dug out back into the hole one by one. He didn't stay any longer. He turned around and flew up into the air. Before he left, he casually threw out a palm. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the series of actions he was making. All their attention was focused on the direction that he had left in. If Chu Yang was here, he would be shocked. All the actions that this person had done were almost exactly the same as his. It was almost exactly the same. Even the direction that he had left in was exactly the same. Meng Wuya's pupils shrank. He said, "Chase." 3,000 people flew up into the air like black clouds and chased into the depths of the forest at top speed. But this time, all the ink cloud guards were truly aghast. Because in all the places in the vicinity, there was actually not a single trace or smell of anyone who had walked past. It was as if no one had passed through this quiet forest at all. If not for the fact that everyone, especially Meng Wuya, firmly believed that Bai Chen's mental imitation wouldn't be wrong, they would simply want to say that Bai Chen had led them in the wrong direction. It was as if Chu Yang and the others had suddenly evaporated in that huge pit. They had disappeared, and there was no trace of them to be found anymore. The commander of the MO Cloud Guards who didn't put Chu Yang in his eyes at all earlier couldn't help sweating profusely at this moment. The other party's anti-tracking methods had obviously reached the acme of perfection. To think that he had underestimated him just now. If he really maintained that kind of mentality, even if his cultivation was 10 times or 100 times higher than the other party's, the other party would still be able to shake him off easily. He could even play with him in the palm of his hand. Meng Wuya closed his eyes and carefully searched for any aura that the other party might or might not have left behind. Since the other party was so proficient in anti-tracking techniques, his eyes were definitely useless now. The other party wouldn't have left any trace for him to track at all. The only thing he could rely on now was his other senses. When vision was no longer reliable, smell, touch, and even intuition could be the key to solving the problem. No matter how good it was, there was no perfect anti-tracking technique in the world. As long as you had passed through here, there would definitely be traces of you left behind. It was just a matter of whether you could find it or not. Meng Wuya once again took a life preservation golden pill. This kind of life preservation golden pill was secretly made by Heavenly Emperor Mo Cloud himself. Its effect was extremely high. It could save a person's life, and it was no problem to extend one's life. At this juncture, Meng Wuya didn't dare to trust anyone at all. He could only rely on himself. But his injuries were really too severe at this moment. He could only take this life preservation golden pill to recover his cultivation in a short period of time. Although this method was like drinking poison to quench thirst, it had to be done. Meng Wuya closed his eyes and floated in front. Relying on his intuition, spiritual sense, and a sense that ordinary people couldn't understand at all, he floated quickly in the dense forest. The large group of people behind him looked solemn and respectful as they followed closely. The direction they were moving in was actually exactly the same as the direction Chu Yang and the others were moving in previously. They kept moving forward like this for 200 miles. When they reached the place where Chu Yang and the others turned, Meng Wuya suddenly frowned and stopped. He murmured, "There's something wrong here. One aura is moving forward, and the other aura is turning from here. Could it be that they are splitting into two here? But splitting the forces is weaker. Dividing the forces will only make it harder to resist the pursuers. Why would they make such an unwise choice?" Meng Wuya's super-sensitive senses finally showed a trace of doubt. Meng Wuya had a very high evaluation of Chu Yang before. After this series of events, he was even more vigilant. He was afraid that he would accidentally fall into Chu Yang's trap again. But the facts were right in front of him. If he couldn't even trust his spiritual sense and intuition, what else could he trust? Meng Wuya made a prompt decision. Anyway, the strength of his side was far superior. Even if they divided into two groups, the strength of each group would still be overwhelming. He was not afraid of the other party's conspiracy. "We will divide into two groups here. Silver-armored soldiers will follow me forward. Black cloud guards will turn right. After we get out of the mountain, we will find a place to regroup." "Yes." Meng Wuya closed his eyes and continued to float forward for about 500 feet. Suddenly, he realized that he had completely lost his previous senses. The aura that Chu Yang had deliberately emitted and condensed was completely broken here. It was like a tree without roots. How could it last for long? Even someone as strong as Meng Wuya couldn't help but feel confused. How could this be? On the other side, the 1,500 black cloud guards were flying forward. But when they reached the intersection in front of them, they saw a towering mountain in front of them. Between the two mountains was a big canyon. In the canyon, an earth-colored river meandered and flowed. It was calm and tranquil. Chu Yang and the others had long disappeared. For a moment, everyone was somewhat at a loss. After chasing them here and there, they had lost them in the end. This was really troublesome. What should we do? This was the unanimous thought of all the Black Cloud Guards. Let's go around it first and regroup with Great General Meng at the front. Then we will discuss the next step. Yes. No matter how Chu Yang and the others escape, this kind of anti-tracking method that completely conceals one's aura is ultimately an action that consumes a lot of energy. It will definitely not last long. We have left a divine sense imprint at every place we pass. When the time comes, as long as we are touched, we will know their whereabouts at the first moment. No matter if they go back or in another direction, as long as they appear, they will be detected by us. They will not be able to escape no matter what. Even if they can escape now, they will not be able to escape in the future. The river water swept up the yellow sand and soil, rolling towards the south. Chapter 1965. The trip to the bottom of the sea this time was completely about holding one breath in the chest. It was purely the circulation of the embryonic breathing technique. Although it was extremely tiring and everyone almost couldn't hold it in for a long period of time, it was still very beneficial to the refinement of one's cultivation. At this moment, Chu Yang even felt that the bottleneck of the celestial being level was gradually loosening, and he could break through at any time. Update P. That tyrannical and pure spiritual energy was constantly flushed out from the tribulation space, and that creation energy was released bit by bit from the meridians and flesh of his whole body. Now, as long as he calmed down and meditated once, he could enter the celestial being level with his head held high. But how could he dare to break through now? Breaking through was no different from courting death. It was too late to cover up his tracks now. Breaking through required a big commotion. Once he broke through, it was bound to cause a huge commotion. He was only at the heaven level before, but with the help of the worldly creation pill, his cultivation had improved greatly. Now, he was facing the threshold of breaking through from the saint level to the celestial being level. He had also accumulated many small levels of energy to increase his cultivation. As long as he broke through, there was no doubt that he would definitely attract all the enemies. Even before he could break through completely, the enemies would already be at the city gates. So, he could only hold it in. Even if he couldn't hold it in, he had to hold it in. Somewhere in the distance, there was a faint glimmer of light. At the same time, an undercurrent from underground was surging violently. Chu Yang frowned. This muddy river should have reached its end. The ultimate fate of this overflowing river was to merge into another river. It would become a brand new water flow, and this water flow was no longer as muddy as before, because it had received a shock. At the end of this river, there was a different situation, because it was a joke to talk about moving stealthily in the clear river water. As long as there were enemies passing by, they would be seen immediately. He would be seen with a single glance. At that time, he would only end up as a live target for others, to be slaughtered. At the end of the river, people also stopped. Chu Yang didn't immediately issue a new order, but his body slowly came to a stop. He stopped in the murky river water. The people behind noticed that Chu Yang stopped moving forward, and naturally, they all stopped as well. They had been running all the way until now. Everyone's admiration for this young Villa Master Chu had already reached the point of prostrating themselves before him. They had been unconvinced of Chu Yang in the beginning and had questioned him when they had started to flee. However, everyone had changed their views a lot after these two changes. At least for now. Everyone began to have a certain degree of confidence that they could escape from Mo Yuntian's death pursuit. Because if he was the pursuer, there was almost a 10% chance that he would have lost him. If they were still unable to escape from Mo Yuntian's grasp, then they could only resign themselves to their fate. It definitely wasn't that Villa Master Chu's plans weren't good enough. It could only be attributed to the will of the heavens playing tricks on people, not the fault of fighting. Chu Yang slowly rose to the surface of the water. When he was about 3 feet away from the surface of the water, he paused for a moment, listening to the movements outside and sensing the changes in the outside world. Then, he rose another foot and sensed the movements in his surroundings again. After confirming that there was no danger, Chu Yang's whole body suddenly rose from the water like a rag. At the moment of rising, his hair had already become completely dry. Following that, his clothes also became dry. Then, his whole body was like a snake that had just come out of the water. With a flash on the surface of the water, he quickly entered the bushes at the side. When he came out of the river, he didn't bring up a single drop of water. The moment he entered the bushes, he didn't stop at all. He silently glided along the grass for a distance of more than 100 feet. Next to him was a small forest with only a few hundred trees. In the next moment, Chu Yang had already entered that small forest. His body slowly sank, and his whole body sank into the soil. The dense spiritual energy around his body stirred and slowly expanded outwards. Gradually, a cave was expanded underground, a cave that could accommodate people. When the second person came in using his method, the space inside the cave was enough to accommodate 200 to 300 people. In less than 10 breaths of time, the 200 people had all followed Chu Yang into the cave. Everyone had a feeling of seeing the light again. The entire process of floating along the river took a full 3 hours. It was only now that they could finally breathe through their nostrils. We were lucky enough to pass the first stage safely. Chu Yang's voice was very low, but everyone listened attentively. Even those who had already thought of death and were in complete despair had now regained some vigor in their eyes. Fantasies were after all just fantasies. Once the real enemy came, no one wanted to die. If there was a chance to live, who would really want to die? Passing this stage is a victory, but it's also just the beginning. Because the next 8 stages are the real fatal ones. Now, we're just at the beginning. There are still 23,000 miles to our destination, the Great River. In these 23,000 miles, any distance of 1 foot or even 1 inch could be the difference between life and death. Chu Yang said, "So, let's rest here for a while. Let's restore our spirit and ensure that our physical strength is intact before we continue on our journey." As he spoke, he instructed everyone to take out the dry food that they had prepared beforehand and began to eat. At everyone's level of cultivation, even if they didn't eat, it wouldn't affect them too much. However, after filling their stomachs, they would have a subtle psychological feeling of, with food in their stomachs, one's heart would not panic. Normally, this feeling naturally didn't matter. However, at such a special time, it would become a kind of spiritual support. A series of chewing sounds could be heard. Everyone was trying hard to restrain themselves, but the fragrance of the dry food was real and real. Even those seniors who had been fasting for decades or centuries were chewing the dry food vigorously at this moment. They had never realized that rice could be so delicious. It seemed that they hadn't eaten for hundreds of years. It was really a waste of life, eat to prove that they were still alive. As Chu Yang ate, he sketched out the next route in his mind. Going out from here was coincidentally the other side of the Forest of Guidance that he had encountered when he first arrived at the Heavenly Palace. The Forest of Guidance was a special place that could only be exited and not entered. In other words, it was a forbidden area. Because it was a forbidden area, there were very few people around. There were also relatively few places that could hide so many people. Then, how could they safely pass through this special place? This was undoubtedly a big problem. The current situation was that they absolutely couldn't allow any mistakes to happen. If they made a mistake, it would be equivalent to sending themselves to the gates of hell. There was no chance of luck, and there was no chance of a second chance. They could only succeed in one strike. Let's first divide the following teams. Chu Yang said lightly, first, we have to divide into 5 small teams. When we escape later, although the 5 teams will move together, there must be a sequence in which they move first. In the long process of escaping, it's impossible that we will never be caught, and it's even more impossible that we won't encounter the enemy. On this point, I hope that all of you are clearly mentally prepared. Although today's journey was smooth, it was because of many external factors. In the future, such favorable conditions will no longer exist. If you want to die, you must have a mentality that disregards life and death. Everyone, do you understand? Chu Yang's heavy voice reverberated in everyone's ears. Everyone silently nodded their heads. Once we encounter the enemy, then, the team that lags behind must be prepared to sacrifice themselves. Only your sacrifice can buy some time for the others when we encounter the enemy, and create a chance to escape. If everyone only cares about escaping, the final outcome will only be complete annihilation. This is the reality. Although I don't want to say it, I have to say it. Chu Yang closed his eyes. This order is up to all of you to decide. Those who must survive, and those who have the most value after surviving can automatically be in the first team. And so on and so forth. The 200 people looked at each other silently. Then, in this silent place, some people consciously walked to the back, and some consciously stayed in the front. At this time, there was no need for modesty, and there was no need for hypocrisy. A hierarchy was automatically formed. Those who stayed at the back were all willing, and those who stayed at the front were also willing. In unison, the front team of 50 people knelt down in front of the 150 people behind them. Then, the second team of 50 people turned around and knelt down. Then the third team. Only the last 50 people stood tall and proud, accepting this salute, accepting everyone's salute. When the people in front stood up, the last team knelt down neatly, followed by the third team, the second team. The people in front knelt at the back because, your sacrifice may allow me to survive. So, this is a life-saving grace. A life-saving grace. I want to kneel and thank you. The people at the back knelt at the front because, I may die, and I will definitely die in front of all of you. If all of you can return alive, then my affairs, my family, my worries, please help me. Please take care of me. This scene happened silently, but it was filled with a kind of shock. In front, about 500 miles away, Meng Huia stood with his hands behind his back with a gloomy face. Behind him, the Mo Yun Tian soldiers, whether it was the Mo Yun guards or the silver-armored soldiers, all of them didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Everyone knew that Great General Meng was really angry now. Meng Wuya would never have dreamed that Chu Yang would actually lead so many people to escape so far away in one breath, and even escape from the range of his own eyes. Now, his heart was full of mixed feelings. There was admiration and even more anger. He was indeed someone that he sincerely admired. He was indeed the person who had the guts to kill Mo Yuntian. Chapter 1966. Only where was Chu Yang now? Even a saint-level divine sense couldn't sense him. What method did he use to avoid it? Thinking of this, Meng Wuya's face suddenly changed. This is from P. There were actually quite a few methods that could block the divine sense of a saint-level expert. However, most of them had a precondition, which was that it had to be used by someone of the same level to avoid it. In other words, as long as you weren't a saint-level expert, or were weaker than Meng Wuya, it was basically impossible to avoid it. However, this statement wasn't absolute, because there were still a few methods that could use some mediums to avoid the divine sense of a super expert. In this mortal world, the most common mediums were water, fire, earth, and so on. As long as these things were used properly, they could weaken the divine sense of a saint-level expert to a great extent. When it came to blocking divine sense, the first thing to use was fire. Fire was the only thing that existed in the form of pure energy among the 5 elements. Strictly speaking, divine sense was actually also a kind of energy. If one used divine sense to interfere with fire, they would definitely be burned by the fire, causing damage to their divine sense. This was something that no expert could avoid. However, it was really difficult to create a protective layer made entirely of fire, and it might not be very useful. Take Chu Yang and the others as an example. If they really created a fire shield, there would be no need to use divine sense to search. They could just start fighting directly. It was really too conspicuous. It was not that one's spiritual sense was unable to sense water and earth. It was just that using one's spiritual sense to sense things that were isolated by water and earth, even if one had reached the level of a saint, would find it extremely difficult to do so. Take the infinite boundless mountain from before as an example. Although Meng Wuya's spiritual sense was undoubtedly shocking, he was only able to sense things within half a foot of the infinite boundless mountain. If it were ordinary ink cloud guards or silver armored soldiers, divine sense wouldn't even be able to penetrate it. Of course, the main reason for this result was that the mountain structure was far superior to ordinary mountain rocks. However, as a medium, earth was indeed the most difficult to penetrate with divine sense. If the medium was water, the situation would be relatively better. Even the ordinary ink cloud guards and silver armored soldiers could detect movements under the water about half a foot deep. For a saint like Meng Wuya, he could detect movements at a depth of more than 3 feet. However, there were no absolutes in this world. There were a few special circumstances that were not within this restriction. One of them was the elven trait of Dukyu. His elven attribute was wood, and he was naturally close to water and earth. His divine sense could easily penetrate everything within 1,000 feet radius. The other type was like Chu Yang. Chu Yang had the heaven-splitting divine technique. He had a large dantian and was always in the 5 elements. His body was accompanied by the changes of yin and yang, and he wandered between life and death. The weakening of the medium in the general sense was negligible to him. Furthermore, the difficulty of Chu Yang's cultivation was at least double that of an ordinary person's. But the strength that he obtained from his cultivation was also double or even more than that of an ordinary person's. His divine sense was at least several times stronger than people of the same level. Moreover, this person of the same level had to be the strongest among ordinary cultivators. The level of Chu Yang's divine sense was much, much stronger than an ordinary person's. Therefore, he could easily sense all changes outside of the 5 elements. This was something that others could only be envious of. How could Meng Wuya, who had the strength of a sage, not understand this principle? Along the way, he didn't see any smoke or dust. Moreover, due to the wrong direction, he didn't see any water flow. Now that he was at his wit's end, he changed his train of thought and instantly had a vague idea. Meng Wuya's face sank. he looked at the commander of the Mo Yun guards and asked, "Did you see a big river in the process of tracking?" "A big river?" The commander pondered for a while and said, "No big river, but there was a small river. The river water was very muddy." Meng Hui's pupils shrank. "A muddy river water?" "Yes." "What was the direction of the river?" Meng Hui's voice had a bit of a heavy tone. "Towards the south." The commander recalled for a while and then answered with certainty. "How long after you separated from me did you see the river?" "About less than half an incense's time. In terms of distance, it was at most 200 miles. The commander was sweating profusely from the interrogation. It was such a muddy river water. Although they saw it at that time, no one paid attention to it. If it wasn't for their super good memory, they would have forgotten it by now. But they were asked in such detail by Great General Meng. Could it be that there was a problem with the river water? Meng Huia closed his eyes and sighed. "Half an incense's time. Sai, when you saw the river, it is very likely that Chu Yang and the others were in the river right under your eyes." "What? How is this possible?" The commander of the Mo Yun guards was shocked. Meng Huia shook his head speechlessly. "It's useless to say more. Let's set off immediately to find the river you mentioned. But, even if we get there now, I'm afraid Chu Yang and the others have already left." The commander was very upset. "There was once an opportunity to establish a peerless martial art in front of me, but I didn't notice it. I let it go lightly and didn't pay attention to it. If the heavens give me another chance, even if I have to roast that river dry, I will still have a harvest." "Bastard! If we don't go there and take a look, how will we know where they went? Are we going to search like headless flies? Do you think the eastern royal sky belongs to your family?" Meng Huia was furious and scolded in anger. At this point, 3,000 people turned back and returned. After a long while, Meng Huia stood in the cave in the forest that Chu Yang had opened up. He looked up to the sky and sighed. "What a genius! It's really hard to imagine how a young man in his 20s could come up with so many ingenious escape plans." Meng Huia really didn't understand. According to the norm, a young man in his 20s would still be training hard in seclusion in the sect, and would still be receiving teachings and reprimands from the masters. But Chu Yang had already leaped out and faced Mo Yuntian head-on with his bare hands. How could he have so many life experiences? Where did he get such rich Jianghu experience? Was it really just that the younger generation would surpass them in time? Just as Meng Huia was sighing to the sky, Chu Yang and the others who were full of energy and in good condition were running along the periphery of the forest. They were fast but silent all the way. Chu Yang's own speed wasn't very fast. But he had been maintaining this constant and uniform speed. And this frequency had driven everyone to run at the same frequency and speed. After a period of time, everyone strangely discovered that even though they had been running for such a long distance, they didn't feel tired at all by using this breathing frequency to circulate their inner breath. This was really a strange thing. Everyone's gaze changed again when they looked at Chu Yang. This guy, how many times did he have to run to be able to come up with such a complete set of experience? This guy couldn't have been chased since he was born, right? This set of actions was simply too systematic. It was really too professional. Stop! Just as he was immersed in the excitement of galloping, a group of people suddenly appeared in front of him and blocked his path. There were actually a lot of people, a total of 400 to 500 people. Actually, strictly speaking, this couldn't be considered a path, but a space in the periphery of the forest. But since Chu Yang and the others were walking, it became a path. But in this kind of place, there were actually people blocking their path? What was going on? Everyone was shocked. Could it be that Mo Yuntian's people had caught up? And they were lying in ambush here? Even though they had escaped their pursuers one after another, everyone, including Chu Yang, was still jittery and paranoid. They would be on tenterhooks for a long time at the slightest movement. Now that so many people had appeared, how could they not be afraid? But when everyone looked carefully, they couldn't help but feel anger rise in their hearts, and evil thoughts grew in their hearts. They saw that the cultivation of this group of people wasn't very high, but they were all outstanding. Cough. This wasn't a description, they were really outstanding. And there was a thick furry tail behind them, their ears were straight, and their mouths were sharp, the wolf clan. Chu Yang suddenly remembered. So it was this group of people. This group of people really persevered. The wolf clan had been chasing Greasy Cat all this time. But since the arrival of many super sects, Chu Yang had also improved his cultivation. At first, he still wanted to avenge Greasy Cat, but the people of the wolf clan had unexpectedly disappeared and their whereabouts were unknown. No one knew where they had gone. It turned out that this group of people hadn't given up and were actually hiding here. Who are you people? A werewolf looked at the people in front of him, somewhat bewildered. Have you seen a chubby member of the Meow clan? Is there something wrong with your eyes? Look at who here looks like a member of the Meow clan. Chu Yang didn't give this group of people a chance to speak at all. His calamity sword flashed coldly, and he took the lead and rushed forward. When blood splattered, at least a dozen werewolves had already fallen to the ground. They couldn't find them earlier, but now that they encountered them, how could they let them go? Kill them, don't leave a single one alive. Chu Yang shouted, the only thing to be careful is to not damage their backpacks. You must not. The backpacks of these werewolves seemed to be their unique symbol. Every one of them would carry one on their back. Should there be a change of clothes or something else inside? However, because of this chance encounter, Chu Yang suddenly had some ideas. When this group of people attacked together, their efficiency was unusually high. It was really like chopping melons and vegetables. It was an absolute one-sided massacre. These werewolves were certainly considered experts among ordinary people. The leader was even at the peak of the heaven stage, close to the level of a saint. But under the siege of more than 200 experts, the weakest of whom was at the saint stage, they were all blasted to pieces in the blink of an eye. They didn't even have a chance to say a word. Everyone was anxiously running for their lives. Who would be interested in mushrooms with them? In just an instant, the ground was swept clean. Then, a brand new group of werewolves appeared at the periphery of the forest. Everyone's cultivation was extremely high, and they hurried on like the wind. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.